sushi. Word of my niggas from the 021. You count 6 shots and I count 2 guns. Some people still think I rap just for fun, but soon they look up to me just like the sun. Yeah, you can come over here.
Maybe you like Caden and Hank, who get a real thrill from the speed of their HDDs.
Hello, welcome back to Six Masters 2020 here, the national tournament for the Oceanic region. I'm Dev Marta, and joining me for the first time in about 9 months that we are finally back casting together, it's Raven. Raven, dude, how are you going tonight?
I am good, and I am so excited to be casting with you again. Like you said, it has been a long time. Raleigh Major qualifier finals for APAC last year was the last time we casted together. Yeah, it feels like forever ago.
Yeah, those games were a lot of fun, and I mean, Six Masters has promised to be the same so far. You guys can keep up to date with all the action on the Rainbow Six ANZ socials. That's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, wherever. We're all there. You can also participate in a bunch of poll votes as well to get your say on who you think's going to win the different games. But Raven, we kicked off Six Masters last week with yourself and Guz. It was a really exciting time to be really putting the spotlight on ANZ now that there's not a lot of other action going globally. What was it like kicking off Six Masters?
It was actually a really great week for matches. We saw some upsets such as LFO beating Elevate, which I'm sure we're going to be talking about a lot later, and even some really back and forth matchups between Wildcard and Sinistar. Knights versus Ferox was also a pretty close affair, so it's really started off strongly.
Yeah, so, I mean, let's kind of recap where we're at so far in terms of how these teams are falling on the ladder. So we are playing a best-of-2 round-robin system with our 8 teams in this league, and so far got TBD and Wildcard sitting at the top, 6 points each. Every map that you win will give you 3 points, and each map has no draws, just wins or losses. So this is kind of where we're sitting at the moment. Obviously, only 1 day of games for each team, so they just played 2 matches each. Pretty early to kind of look at a pattern for where we're expecting to feel out, but I guess it does kind of give us some idea into how these teams have come out of the gate, whether they've come on the performance we've expected. How are you kind of seeing this so far? Is this where you'd expect it to be sitting, or is there maybe a bit of a diversion from the norm?
Yeah, I think there's definitely some differences to what you would have expected out of week 1, with the major one being LFO and Elevate. LFO coming in through the open qualifiers, being the bottom seeded team. You would have expected that Elevate, being the top seeded team, would have been able to secure both those maps, but they did get that upset map, and they actually got the series victory, if you want to call it that, even though they won a map each, based on that round differential. So that is LFO there in 3rd spot, and I think that is really the biggest shock to the start of Six Masters.
I think especially because coming into this, Elevate, they came 2nd in the Rainbow Six Pro League for ANZ last season, Season 11 under Fnatic, so they're the top-seeded team here in this league. LFO coming through open qualifiers, they're the bottom-seeded, so it was literally the top team in theory versus the bottom team in theory, and like you pointed out, LFO came ahead in the round differential, which makes the difference when it comes down to those tiebreakers later on in the season, which makes the difference for those playoff spots and those prize money placings as well.
Yeah, hugely. I mean, if LFO are able to keep up the form that they had and take more maps off some of these top teams, there's potentially a chance that they could, have a close finish with Elevate, and that head-to-head can come back to bite you.
Well, let's see where we'll be going tonight in terms of the matches we got going on. We talked a lot about LFO. They'll be kicking off tonight with a game against TBD. Those two teams will play 2 maps, as it is a best of 2 system here. Each map does have overtime. And then later on tonight, we've got Team Sinister versus Pittsburgh Knights, which is a rematch from just the end of last season of the Pro League as well. Is there a match here that you're kind of looking to be the match of the night, or any particular flags that you're seeing from these teams?
I'm actually really excited for both matches, LFO versus TBD, mainly to see how LFO can back it up against another strong side. And then even the Sinister Knights game that was played recently, as you said, in Pro League. And the Knights had a relatively off week for what we had seen from them in Pro League. So I think that's going to be a great matchup.
Yeah, definitely stick around for that one later tonight. But first up, we do have LFO TBD. Let's have a look at some of the players on these rosters. You might not be so familiar with these guys. Coming up through the open qualifier, they didn't drop a game that entire qualifier, and they've come through, came out of the gate swinging with the map against Elevate so far. And we see some familiar faces here. Hills did play in the Pro League last season on what's now Knights. So, but other than that, not necessarily players we're familiar with.
No, definitely not. Mostly unknown names there, but I'm sure Mims has probably become a bit more of a memorable name for some people. He had a fantastic first week against Elevate, and ultimately he did get the game-winning clutch in a 1v3, I believe it started out as, on Clubhouse. So that was a really big effort from him, and I'm sure there's going to be a bit of a spotlight on him going into this matchup.
Yeah, no doubt. And if you've been following the Snowball Esports publications, you will have seen that Mims actually was awarded the MVP for last week as well. But nonetheless, let's have a look at who they'll be facing. That's TBD tonight. These guys have been in the Pro League for quite some time. They qualified for Six Masters. They played on stage last year at MEO at Six Masters 2019, and these guys haven't had any roster changes since Six Masters. These are the guys you know and love.
Yeah, and they had a bit of instability in terms of their roster in Pro League, but they have managed to maintain that, some commonality moving forward. And they had a relatively good week 1 against Kanga, who really showed some resilience on Kafe. That map actually went into overtime, but in the end, TBD still proved to be too strong and showed they can still be relatively consistent. So they're going to have to put up a big effort against LFO. I mean, we've seen that Elevate can have dropped points to LFO, and there's every chance that TBD could do the same. But QD was a big factor for TBD's performance last week. He had a massive map 1 and really kept them in that.
Yeah, a lot of expectations, I think, on TBD. Season after season, they have been top 4 in the Pro League, and now coming into Six Masters, maybe there's an opportunity for that to kind of move around a little bit. And the key is consistency. That's what we saw from TBD last season in Pro League. They managed to keep that consistently, and they managed to keep themselves in the top 4. I think they ended up in 3rd place, actually, even over wildcards. So quite a strong performance from these guys so far. LFO TBD, I think that most people's money would go on to TBD to be the favorite. You know, they're the old guard. They've been around for longer, but I feel like it's just not that clear cut at the moment.
Yeah, I really don't think it is. We have only seen that one series of this kind of caliber from LFO, so there's not a massive amount to go on, but just given how they played against Elevate and considering the pressure they might have felt or not have felt in that first week, it makes this week all the more interesting.
Yeah, right. So let's talk about the map veto for this. We've got these teams going to play in a best of 2 series, like I've said. The way that this works is each team gets to ban 1 map out of the 7 maps in the pool, and then each team gets to pick 1 map out of the 5 remaining maps, and then the other 3 maps just don't get played. So really, it forces these teams to have a much stronger map pool. Let's pull up the first 2 operator bans, map bans rather, and see where we won't be heading, and maybe we can kind of discuss that a little bit. So LFO getting rid of the consulate, TBD, the theme park. We talked a little bit about this coming into this. I don't know, I feel like this is pretty expected so far in terms of what we'd be looking at. Your thoughts, Raven?
Yeah, I mean, I was even thinking that consulate might slip through, and that could potentially even be TBD's pick. So that could be what LFO's thought process is in banning it out. That changes things a little bit. Theme park, at this stage, though, for TBD, I'd say is just a ban. They probably haven't worked a whole lot on it, and just looking to keep the maps that they have practiced in play.
I feel like the consulate one is pretty salient for a point. You know, like you were saying, you expected maybe it would go through. From TBD's side, we're probably looking at consulate and Villa being their best maps. So I feel like TBD is probably going to pick Villa here, which is a kind of mixed result map for LFO. As for the LFO camp, Theme Park was banned out. I don't think that'll phase them that much. They're probably going to go with something strong like a cafe or clubhouse, which they're pretty comfortable with. Let's roll out the picks and see where we'll end up. Villa picked up by LFO, not TBD, and TBD picks Cafe. Okay. I thought it was going to be the other way around.
Yeah, I mean, there's a pretty high pick rate still for LFO on Villa, at least in the matches that we've seen through LPL and the qualifiers. And likewise with Cafe, so I think this is going to be a really interesting series because both these maps, in terms of LFO, probably stack up all right compared to some of the other maps they could have gone to. And TBD, picking Cafe, I'm surprised about because they really struggled against Kanga in that last week, particularly in the second half, which is what led it to go to overtime. So I guess they feel like they can make some big changes here to perform a bit better. And also, LFO have a VOD on them now.
Yes, that's a great point. We talked about how TBD played. They came out really strong, but it was close against Kanga. And I mean, in terms of the more longer term kind of history for TBD, we have seen mixed result. They did lose it to Elevate last season, 4-7. So I feel like that can swing, but I don't know. I don't feel confident saying what I expect these match results are going to end up at.
Yeah, it's really hard to call, and a lot of that comes down to LFO still being a bit of the dark horse. We saw how they played last week, and this week it's all about them backing it up and proving that it wasn't really a fluke. And on that, Enigma, you talked about Snowball Esports, they actually spoke to Enigma, and he said that they're going to ensure that taking a map off the top team isn't going to be just a fluke, and that you can expect them to push for a win this week again. So I'm really curious to see whether they can back that up.
Yeah, I do really feel like LFO is the team to watch out for if you're looking for an underdog. I know a lot of people, especially us Aussies, we love an underdog. And LFO have come into this, like we said, through an open qualifier, just a bunch of guys that are always constantly beating me in ranked, which... and then they come through and they take a map off of the top-seeded team. I mean, coming into this week, it's the next item on the agenda, TBD for them. I think that they're probably fairly comfortable expecting what maps they'll get to. TBD didn't throw any curveballs here. They played a map they played last week. They picked a map they played last week. They banned a map that no one's played before other than Sinister and Wildcard here in ANZ. So from LFO's perspective, you're probably thinking, okay, so far, everything has gone to plan.
Absolutely. And one thing that's really, I guess, helpful sometimes when you're the bottom seed is you have less expectations on you, especially a team like LFO coming through open qualifiers, never really playing this level before. I mean, all of us basically wrote them off last week, and look how they performed. And there's something to be said about a team that doesn't have that uber amount of pressure like a team of Elevate that have on them, where they were expected to take easy maps in that first week.
Yeah, well, let's have a look at what you guys thought about who's going to win this game, because we're still a bit undecided, could swing. The poll vote comes out very, very close, very much echoing what we were saying. A lot of people are expecting a trade of maps here. 37% to LFO, 39%, just a slight advantage to TBD, with nearly a quarter of you guys thinking that we're going to see a trade of maps here. And that could totally be the case here, remembering that both of these teams are currently orgless. So if you're an organization out there, a club looking to pick up a team, this is a game you should be watching. And yeah, I mean, I think that's totally reflective of what we're looking at.
Yeah, I really think that is a fair assessment of this series, and it's tough to call. I mean, I know that in the Snowball Esports predictions, we were all very split on terms of how this is going to pan out. And yeah, it's just really, really hard to call. And these maps make it even more interesting because they seem to be pretty good maps for both of these teams.
Something that I was talking to one of the Kanga guys about previously is this map veto system, which is fairly unusual compared to a lot of other Rainbow Six vetoes for best of ones, best of twos. Usually you get a lot more bans than this. This forces teams to have a really strong map pool. You only get one ban. Only one ban every week. So you can either use that to just ban out your do what Wildcard do and just always ban border, ban out that map that you just never want to play, or you want to try and target ban against your team like LFO did here, getting rid of the consulate. Now, it can come back to bite you either way, but it means that these teams, it's in my opinion, more likely you're going to see closer series where each team takes their own map, because you're not playing a map that necessarily LFO is as comfortable on when TBD gets to pick it, because LFO only got to ban the one map. that said, I could totally see this swinging 2-0 for LFO, and that's what I put down for my snowball predictions, because I'm going for the underdogs here, and I just want to see that upset that they started last week really continue.
Yeah, I mean, seeing the vetoes definitely makes that feel a little bit more of a compelling argument that you could see an LFO 2-0, because these are two of their stronger maps. That really surprises me about TBD not trying to pick more to the weaknesses, because as you were saying about the veto system, a team has to be really strong on a lot of maps now in terms of getting through 6 Masters. A team like LFO, you would expect only just starting out at this level, coming through LPL Pro and the open quals to get here. Maybe their map pool isn't quite as deep to this level, and that should be exploitable in theory.
Yeah. Oh no, I totally agree with you on that. And then there is that flip side, which is that TBD have more VODs on them, which is an argument that I think most people would say, well, if they're a more established team, there are more VODs against them. But remembering that LFO played in the LPL Pro, where they played through an entire double elimination bracket, plus a lot of the games in the open qualifier were broadcast as well. There's a lot of VODs you can go back and watch LFO as well, which can then further exploit a potentially less developed map pool here. So I think that does give a real opportunity to TBD. But despite that, in terms of the actual maps that we're heading to, Kafe as TBD's pick, we've seen decent results from LFO. They've beaten Eura in the open qualifier 7-2. However, they also lost it to PC419 in, I believe it was the same qualifier, in fact. Yeah, indeed it was. So, mixed results overall from LFO on that map.
Yeah, and that was actually their only map loss in the qualifiers. So, I mean, they had a pretty strong qualifier run in general, and I think that counts for a bit, but I mean, the team caliber can be quite different, and considering that because they were the bottom seed, they have to go through from the top to bottom in terms of who they play in 6 Masters. So they already had Elevate, now TBD, next week it's Wildcard. It only in theory gets easier for them, but really it was always going to be a hard start for them to 6 Masters.
And I think that's why it's even more commendable that they came out strong. And it's a pattern that we saw last season as well with Pro League, not with 6 Masters, with Pro League, where I think it was in the first 2 weeks we had like Homeless, which is now Knights, and Kanga come out winning against like Wildcard and taking draws to Fnatic and all that. So I can totally see LFO continuing this. There is a question mark of when is it just a fluke? They're here to prove that wrong. I'm totally willing to give them that opportunity here.
Yeah, they have everything in their power to do so, honestly. And I think that puts a lot more pressure on TBD. I really feel like the result from last week against Elevate actually probably would hinder the mindset of TBD, at least just a touch. Of course, they're going to be confident in themselves, and they would be confident coming into this matchup regardless. But to see how LFO performed against a team like Elevate, that TBD really struggled to take points off in Pro League, I think that's going to play a little bit of havoc in terms of your mindset coming into the game, and maybe just second guess a little bit about how you approach the game.
I think going on from TBD's mindset perspective, right? Last week they were playing against Kanga on Kafe, which is their map pick tonight. TBD went up 4 rounds, and I don't think Kanga had gotten a single frag that entire time. Like, that's the best possible position you could put yourself in mentally to close out a game that ends up going all the way to overtime, and they only just win 8-6. So there's never a point where TBD has absolutely got it in the bag. There's always opportunities for teams like Kanga to come back, and potentially tonight LFO. I mean, it is their map where we're playing first, as far as I'm aware. We will be playing Villa first, and that is interesting. One of TBD's good maps as well. When I was writing down what I thought the best maps for TBD, it was Villa and Consulate. So a bit of a gamble from LFO to take TBD to one of, in my opinion, best maps. So I don't know. I'm a bit scared, but I'm just back and forth every second, and I think that's totally reflected in what we've been saying about this being such a tight game, and the poll vote reflecting that as well.
Yeah, and I think it just kind of shows that LFO seem to be confident in their game to pick Villa against TBD, which we can see statistically has been one of TBD's better, if not best maps. So for them to go out and pick that, leaning into their strengths, I think shows their mindset in that they're not really intimidated or afraid by these top teams.
Well, it's time to jump on in to Villa here. It is LFO's map pick. Kicking it off here for 6 Masters Playday 3. This should be a fairly tight game, but let's see if LFO can back up their map pick here with a victory.
And these operator bans could play a big factor here. It seems like teams are really leaning towards something to do with wall denial or gadget denial. So I would expect to see a Thatcher, Maverick, maybe even Thermite ban or Habana ban come off the board. Or
Gonna get rid of that Ying nice and first, yeah. So, I mean, Ying's an interesting one because of that, the buff recently and then the revert back to just 3 Candelas. So, despite that, TBD is still a little bit scared of it and want to lock it away nice and early. Ying was not at all a common ban before that buff. And so it's interesting to see that despite that slight reversion of that buff, we're still seeing the Ying get banned here.
Yeah, I think generally teams are just deciding they don't want to deal with it, but also it can be helpful for getting rid of gadgets. And in a meta at the moment where there's a lot of soft breach that needs to be used, clearing the gadgets is pretty important. And so starting on defense as TBD, getting rid of that Ying could really help them play utility havoc against LFO.
Mango's coming out with the angry face in chat. I'm not sure if that was for banning the Clash.
Yeah, that'd be the Clash. Mangoes is pretty famous for playing Clash on Villa after some of TBD's matches in Pro League. So a bit of a target ban there coming out of LFO, which again, I think shows their mindset. They've done their prep. They're feeling confident to take TBD on this map. They seem to know exactly what they're in for.
I respect that. I mean, it shows that they've done their VOD research. So I'm actually pretty confident everything that we've seen so far from LFO has indicated that they're primed and ready for this game, which is exactly what they need to be tonight. Especially starting on the attack, which is typically requires you to have a bit more initiative and confidence rather than the defense where you can sit back and kind of play reactively. You really have to keep that initiative on attack.
Yeah, they really have to bring their A game to start off this map because sometimes you can fall into a slump if you struggle to attack on Villa. And some teams don't bounce back from that. Some teams just sometimes draw extra motivation. Either way, it's just going to be a bit of an onus on LFO to start strong.
So set up here, the Bandit and the Goyo. Now Goyo has been an operator TBD have really began to embrace. I know he was very much on meta. He did receive a bit of a nerf when he lost that shield, but we see that TBD accommodate for that by bringing the deployable shield on not only the smoke, but also the Wamai. So that makes a grand total of 4 shields. And that Bandit not actually being used to Bandit trick, but rather to protect these shields. Any Ash charge that attempts to actually hit the shield won't detonate, it will be destroyed. So that's something Sogs has to be extra aware of. He can still use the Ash Charge to destroy these shields, but he has to make sure it doesn't actually touch that shield and get within range of the electrical field. Has to land next to it, and then the explosion to destroy the shield. So I like this this choice from TBD. Really nice, strong setup.
Yeah, it really puts an onus on just precision and accuracy of intel from LFO, because if they get a bit sloppy, they could well and truly waste some utility trying to clear some of that. So far, it's a really interesting push from LFO. They do see Joker on the roam, so deciding whether to push into that, if his style is backing him up, could be a bit of a trap. It really leans into TBD's strengths as a bit of an aggressive team, willing to play across the map to stall you out.
Presence on Study. Player entering downstairs is nasty here on the Nomad. He does have Nomad charges to prevent these flanks downstairs. Interestingly, 2 Nomad charges placed to prevent that flank downstairs, and of course we did see Hills droning there as well. The IQ usually going downstairs indicates clearing out of utility from below, and we can see the defense is definitely ready for that with those pre-placed holes. It'd style also on this north side roam. Hills may be willing to chase that, but he might encounter the Jaeger of Itby style ready and waiting here on these red stairs.
Yeah, and early engagement's coming out, though, favoring LFO, so it is a good start on entry. It is a risky one with the Habana taking the gunfight. Losing that could have been detrimental, but did survive. As you said, Cutie did do some good work on site to have holes above so that he can help back up his teammates. And of course, they can be used by somebody else. Joker was the one to get that refrag. But so far, Dev, this is looking pretty good for LFO at the start of this attack.
Pinch now on the objective. Cutie just holding firm. SMG-11 in hand. And an avenue onto the bomb site firmly opened here by the Habana of Angmo. Control all of top round, and Study makes us a pincer maneuver, and Cutie feels he has to get aggressive. He's punished and Angmo's in sight. Full control now Or rather, this is the Ippy style, holding firm. Put under the pump at the moment. Joker here to support from the door at top red, but you can see the pressure that Ippy style's on low HP as well. Plenty of time for LFO to execute.
Yeah, and I like that the execute is happening onto bar there. There's so much denial on the other side. So LFO going to have to go deep. Plan is going down by Mims, being covered by Angmo, who has been tagged. Ippy Style's going to sneak around, but actually he's fragged out, which means it is going to be all up to Joker. But he gets pushed from the study. That's a great start from LFO there, taking that first round.
I really do love that one. Excellent work from LFO from the first pick and then converting that into the round victory piece by piece, taking the control that they needed. There seemed to be no answer from TBD for the opening of the study wall and taking control of the brown stairs. TBD just wasn't quite able to hold on long enough, and LFO, they had so much time, they had the manpower as well. Managed to convert that round. Now we do see the retry here on Aviator Games from TBD. A Montaigne teased out from Sogs on LFO, but that will be 6 picked off of. I love that. I mean, you don't have to have a Montaigne strat to just pick Montaigne in 6-pick phase and then get rid of him. It just makes the defenders think twice and look, maybe they would be thinking to themselves, okay, maybe we need to swap out this bandit for a Legion. Maybe we need to change some of our lineup somewhere, and those mind games, totally underrated.
You're totally right. That really could have had an impact on how the defense plays out. Mangoes took a while to lock in the Wamai, so there probably was some discussion from TBD whether maybe to bring the Legion, whether it's something that LFO would lock in. It's definitely an underutilized way of the 6-pick, or underthought of area of 6-pick. I really like.
I think Cutie's actually moved that shield. I'm not sure whether that shield was in that spot last time. They mostly dedicated a utility to holding the top of brown stairs, and now it looks like TBD is trying to make sure that they're just stronger on their sight positions themselves. You can see instead they're expecting to be losing this classical hall control, placing barbed wire there to slow down their attackers. Still some kind of presence at top brown here with this deployable shield. The Wamai's a perfect operator to hold this as well, as if the attackers try to flash out and then destroy that shield in that position, he can just keep throwing those discs to catch any projectiles that threaten his shield. But I expect that the Wamai of Mangoes is he's expecting to get flushed out at some point.
Definitely seems like it, and you're right. The longer that the Wamai can stay alive, the stronger that's going to be, because he will store up those magnets and can continually use those to deny the utility. So I think that's something that LFO will have to consider dealing with early if they want to take that control. But so far it looks like they're doing a pretty similar push to the previous round, and they're going to try and flush out the aggressive roam from TBD that we did see. I think in terms of TBD, what they need to do is maybe push back into LFO a little bit more, because LFO were happy to get up in their face and happy to take those picks early, and that worked out so well for them when they came to their execute.
Bomb located by attackers.
And from LFO's perspective, it's very much the same kind of attack. This downstairs presence here, and Hill's looking for this late flank up Astro. Joker does start to shoot a little bit, giving away his position, and Hills decides not to give away his own, but it doesn't matter. Joker's ready for it. Not sure whether he had a call on that one, because there was no one on that camera, but Joker winning that gunfight is a great way to kick this off in the round.
But they've actually taken that control of the brown stairs that we were highlighting earlier. Strong for the Wamai, so maybe he rotated off, feeling that the push was coming from the other side, and this is really strong control given the space, but oh, Cutie hits a nice tight shot. It is refrag. Mims goes off to bring it back to a 3 versus 3, and that means coming into this final minute, it's still looking pretty good for LFO.
Just cautious in this gunfight. Sogs finds one. 2-on-2 now. Sogs for another. 2 versus 1. Just Mangoes on site. So much time left that he has to delay. This will have to be a clutch for Mangoes, holding fast. Not sure whether he wants to make a play. He's doing the patient game at the moment. Angle's open, and now his position located by that drone. A smart move from LFO, not getting too ahead of themselves. Just find that position. Now they're going to force down the plant. Mangoes definitely hears that, but I'm not sure if he can find the angle. Starts to push up. He's preempting the peak, and Sogs for another. Closing out that round for his team. And that's 2 straight for LFO.
They're looking good so far, Dev. These attacks have not phased them at all. They're taking heads-up gunfights against TBD, and they're trading out and refragging really effectively. There's not often that they are at a man disadvantage. They're at a 2v3 for what felt like only 10 seconds in that round. And other than that, it seems like they've either had the advantage or kept it even. So that says a lot about their playstyle and the way that they're doing this room clear.
I think it's also really telling of LFO, the way that they're playing is not how a lot of people would typically be critical of new teams or teams that are just entering the higher level of competition. A lot of people would say, well, the new teams, they're going to be super frag heavy. They're going to make the fundamental mistakes. They're not going to drone when they're in an advantage. And LFO demonstrated really well there that they know what map control that they need to take. They know where their focus is, but they also know when there's an opportunity to take a flank and take some extra ground, like Sogs did, pushing up from 90, taking control and pushing up landing as well for that opening 2k near the end of the round. And then even in that 2 versus 1, they looked at the clock, said, got 50 seconds, guys, no need to get ahead of ourselves. Nice quick drone. Really nailing that down. I've been hugely impressed by LFO. They are absolutely looking like a Six Masters class team.
Yeah, I think that's a really common criticism of newer teams to competition when they come out of Challenger League. Previously, for example, in promotions, people would consider them maybe less tidy, a little less organized, that kind of thing, or maybe they lean on a certain play style. But so far, LFO's team very thorough, well-disciplined as well. They don't seem like they're often overextending in situations where they're just straight up losing a man for no reason. I think that is a really promising sign for the start of their Six Masters campaign. And if they do manage to continue that and continue this form, I mean, they're trending towards taking a map of TBD now. It could really change a lot of predictions in the way a lot of people would have thought Six Masters could pan out.
And TBD is the team currently sitting at the top of the standings alongside Wildcard. They're the only ones alongside Wildcard who haven't lost a map yet, and LFO could break that trend for TBD. It's TBD who's going to take the initiative here and move over to the stat bomb site instead of trying Aviator Games for a third time in a row, and that forces LFO to adapt, use their alternate strategy. It looks like they are going for a map control take here from the study side. 2x Kairos sets used to open up the wall that was reinforced into the pool room. A lot of reinforcements over here to prevent that map control take and delay LFO, and so far it's working, but they've made good time. 1 minute down. And it seems like there's a decent amount of control that Habano is ready to rotate across to Master and pressure from there.
Yeah, interesting clear there, just using the utility and then bailing away. Hills is actually going to be the first one to fall, and that's to Ippy style. Trying to get into the game there, and Jaeger hasn't had a massive impact so far. Very instrumental player for TBD, but of course it is early days. So far, LFO look like they're heavily leaning towards the Master take yet again.
Unfortunate for Hills, second time in a row he has been the first to fall, just going on his solo mission. Nice angle opened up by that Hibana. Mims takes bathroom control thanks to an unreinforced wall and his breaching charges. I think he's a bit concerned about C4s. Nasty does drone up a little bit ahead for him, but not so much that his drone gets exposed. Ippy style, just a few love taps there into the bathroom. Now he goes to play on this Goyo shield for that stronger position. Ippy style is also supported by the player on his stairs, but now extra pressure comes out from Nasty on the Astro window. Not a lot of angles can be gained from that position, but 2 kills for LFO. Sogs and Mims jump into the fray. Now the 3 remaining TBD players have 40 seconds left to delay.
Young Cutie's moved up into a pretty aggressive position there on the bricks, but he's flailing around a bit, and it looks like Mims might have heard that he's close. He's keeping a close eye on that doorway. As Nasty finds another one, LFO setting themselves up for a really solid execute here. Cutie will mean the diffuser is dropped. TBD fight back, but it is a 2 versus 1 now, Dev, in the final 20 seconds.
Ball on Jack Dad now. Sitting on the bomb site. Plant being forced. Will the C4 deny? It gets pulled off, but that C4 would have missed nonetheless. Jack Dad clearly doesn't know where these players are. Now the LFO players stack together to protect that diffuser, and they lock out that round. That's 3 straight here for LFO.
Wow, it's just looking so good for them so far. The way that they are structuring themselves and never over-regressing, pushing together, ensures that TBD just never have much of an advantage in these rounds. That's 3 deep in the half, so halfway through the half. And TBD haven't really looked at all like they're going to be able to close out any of these rounds. And for a Villa defense half, I'm quite surprised.
Yeah, and I feel like TBD is one of those teams that does feel more comfortable on their defenses than on their attacks. I can't claim to have any stats that would back that up, saying that they have a higher win percentage on defense than the average win percentage. But I feel like when I think TBD and the characteristics of that team, I'm thinking Ippy style running around popping heads on Jaeger. And yes, he has had somewhat of an impact. He got that opening kill last round. It didn't make the difference in the end. LFO still got that round, and it's twice in a row now that LFO has converted a 2 versus 1 into a round victory, and they're just so good at, once they have that man advantage mid-round, converting that into the plant position, not necessarily the plants, but every single one of these rounds, LFO has been either having planted or in a position where they are forcing down the plant and making TBD try to deny that, putting themselves in exposed positions that LFO capitalizes upon.
That's right. TBD just can't get ahead at this stage. It's looking really tough for them, and they're doing a pretty similar setup to what we saw last time, extending it over to Aviator just to delay some of that utility use or expend some of that utility on the other side of the map. It means that they'll be less used closer to site. But it didn't seem to hinder LFO at all. They ended up taking pretty simple master control even after losing hills. Once they flushed out those players in Astro, it was never in doubt.
A lot of good pre-placed drones downstairs. I'm sure LFO is going to be upset at our Observer for showing these, but I like it. Thank you, Observer. Not sure if we got MC tonight. Did you know it's at Repel, MC?
Yeah, it's MC.
Yeah. MC. What a legend. Once again, LFO going for this downstairs presence thanks to those pre-placed drones. They know what's clear. They can put their players into the building nice and early. And I've mentioned before, Hills going downstairs, playing... He's going to get rid of the big box there. But playing the IQ, he can shoot a lot of utility, clear it out from below. And also the Nomad there to support him as well. As the ADS is wasted now by a Thatcher and some stuns. Bit of excess utility there. But LFO are free to destroy that shield now if they wish to. And here's that utility being cleared out thanks to the IQ.
Yeah, good play from Hills below to be clearing out the utility. They're being very thorough with clearing everything out, which is a really good sign to see here. Zogs in the window is going to facilitate clearing more utility as Jack, that's the first to fall for TBD. Again, TBD losing his players early, putting them at that disadvantage. I mean, we saw the opening death coming out in LFO a couple of rounds, but they managed to claw it back. I think that's the difference, is TBD never really have felt like they've consistently refragged.
Attackers drop the diffuser.
There is Ippy style finding one, an eventual refrag onto the player that got that first kill, and
Oh,
Sogs, not sure what happened there, mate, but 3 on 4 now. Finally, TBD have that numbers advantage, but this is really, really great ground gained by LFO. Full control of Astro.
Cover the diffuser.
Just trying to convert that into side presence. A player from TBD has rotated downstairs. 1 minute left, so there is time to destroy that Goyo shield and not worry too much about the entry prevention that it generates. Still good control from LFO, but oh, there's a good kill from Hills. An essential one. Cutie caught off guard there, trying to push aggressively, making a play. Now, where are the last 3 players from TBD? We saw one downstairs. It could be Joker. No, it's not, but he does have his C4 still in hand. He could use his Neither Plant. There's a good one for Mangoes. Pushing in, looking for more. Mims punishes Ippy style. Just Mangoes and Joker.
Yeah, but now actually it's all up to Mims, and he's the player that shone bright for LFO last week against Elevate on Clubhouse. He get the game-winning clutch, and now he's in a 1 versus 2 clutch against Joker and Mangoes, who've been standing up for their team in this round, playing very patient at this angle and a nice peek coming out to secure the round for TBD. Finally on the board now, Dev, in a round that was much better for them.
And finally they managed to convert that man advantage. I think it was a 4v3. Eventually, it got a bit close for comfort there, didn't it? Going down to a 2v2, but
yeah.
They lost the opening pick. It didn't matter. They made a few corrections in the mid-round, and unfortunately, Sogs with the team kill wouldn't have helped out LFO very much. Not sure which player he team killed. It wasn't Angmo. He was already dead. Must have been Nasty, I think.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Nasty.
So that never helps really, but just a little mistake can cost you the round. Especially when your team, the opposing team is on the ball, like TBD were that round.
Yeah, the thing I liked that LFO did was once that team kill happened, they just instantly took that control of Astro. And that really brought them back into that round, because even though they were at that man disadvantage, as you pointed out, TBD actually had a player offside. And having that Astro control is huge because you can clear out Trophy relatively easily from Astro. And then there's just a few angles you have to worry about if you're trying to secure a plant. So it was definitely within reach from LFO, even at that stage. But TBD did a great job with that retake. And, secured the round, and they're going to finally rotate all the way through to Kitchen Dining now. Haven't seen them play this one yet out of these 4 rounds. So this is something that LFO is going to have to adapt to.
5 seconds left before insertion.
Yeah, it is important to distinguish that that was not an LFO throw or anything. That was TBD. I mean, LFO had that mistake, but TBD won the rounds. Fair and square, well played. Thanks to them playing well, I guess. And as you mentioned, it is Kitchen now. So TBD aren't really keen to keep retrying that Aviator site. They couldn't really maintain control of Brown, and that presence below seemed to affect them quite a lot, so they'll go down to Kitchen. We're playing on a side of the map that we haven't necessarily seen LFO be quite as successful on here. Holding that Kitchen does rely typically on quite a lot of vertical play and or roaming. These castle barricades are a nice addition here, especially as LFO only bring one set of explosives, that is Stogs, aside from the breaching charges, which do help, but it's one thing to be able to destroy walls and use explosives at a melee range, but being able to do it with a Zephyr and Ash is very different, or grenades. Nasty finds the first kill, that's Itby style, shot down.
Yeah, and he was lurking around down the bottom floor, came up, maybe unaware that those walls had been opened, or maybe just trying to get a cheeky peek, but either way, shut down by LFO, so an opening kill to them, puts them in a great position to start the round out, and that's a bit of an impact player for TBD that won't have a chance to have an impact on the round. And again, we want to highlight those drones. LFO have been pretty strong with their drones, setting up nice pre-placed ones, drones on the flank, again, being very thorough and organized. It's a great thing to see.
Joker trying to hold fast here at China, but droned out into oblivion and players contesting. Also a push up from Pantry. Not sure if the defense is aware. Ungmo does finally take out Joker. That was the player at China, and now there's 2 players pushing up to refrag. Are they aware of the Pantry angle? They've got 2 positions to be cautious of. Sog's going to jump on the drone there. Jack Dad right around that corner. He might go for the peek. Sogs is 1 bullet away from his death, and he peeks up around. Sogs is still up, but there's the first player down, runs out of ammunition, and Sogs doesn't commit to the peek. He's so scared, being so low on HP, and that means Jack Dad has the ability to reload now. And elsewhere, Hills does find Mangoes, but still Jack Dad here and waiting. Eventually taken out by Heels on a good entry, but Cutie for the response. Now the plant being forced down.
Is going down. Cutie. Yeah, that plant going down is going to make it really tough for Cutie on the retake. That C4 is not going to help either, unfortunately, and that was a big part of him being able to make that a success. LFO closed the round out, still looking strong, Dev, not phased at all by that previous round, and really read into the hole that TBD had perfectly.
I was a little bit worried there for a minute. With I thought that Jack Daddy was capable of getting a 2K there in Pantry and really locking that out, and that would have helped, but I think there was a breakthrough moment with Hills there. I'm not sure where he got the first kill from. I assume he pushed in through China, where they already killed Joker, left that kind of exposed, takes out that first player, whoever it was, and then pushes on to finish off Jack Dad while he's worried about the Pantry stairs. So really important kills there for Hills. Kills for Hills? Why not? That really opened up the gates for LFO that round.
Yeah, it did. I think that's just generally been the story for LFO's attack on Villa, is this their coordination and timing of the way they peek and push things is just working out so well against TBD. And I don't know whether it's to say that it's hard countering TBD or it's just really effective team play. I'd say it's probably more the latter. And the fact that LFO attacking Villa up 4-1 against TBD, who we said this is one of their strongest maps. I'm still quite astounded, and I'm slowly being converted, Dev, that LFO are, I don't know, there's something else.
Yeah, I've been hugely impressed. And it does say top left that this is the map pick of TBD, but I'm 99% sure that is incorrect, and this is actually the map pick of LFO. That said, coming into this game, I was expecting that Villa was a totally plausible map pick for TBD. Villa and Consular, according to my stats, were the best maps for TBD. And if I go back a little bit, in terms of the history of TBD on this map, they beat Kanga last season in Pro League, beat Sinister last season in Pro League, beat Wildcard, and beat Fnatic on this map. So this is not just a bad map for TBD. This is a good map for TBD that LFO has taken and improved upon their own game and dismantled TBD.
Just goes to show that LFO came in with a plan. I mean, they've clearly voted TBD. We saw it with the counter ban. The clash was a heavy indicator that they knew what they were doing in terms of the operator bans, and that they know what they've done with this map pick. And yeah, that's a bit of an alarm bell for TBD, and they're going to have to readapt on the fly now. That's a really important part there. TBD have to now, on a map that they would have considered themselves really strong, they're the ones in the back foot. They need to be changing things up, and that's tough.
Yeah, oh, for sure. And I mean, a really good point about the clash. Something I missed in the ban phase was the fact that, yes, Mangoes is quite a prolific clash player on this map, and really good point of how much that has seemingly hurt TBD. They still have the Goyo, which is another favorite of theirs, but it doesn't seem to be enough. Now, as for TBD in this final round, they retry Aviator games where they've been unsuccessful twice so far and dodged for 3 rounds. But now they have made an adaptation. Mango's on the Cade, likely trying to Cade trick any walls Angmo attempts to open. And there you go, there are the Hibana pellets on the door in pool, and now there is an angle from the 90 window. It works perfectly. Great job to Angmo, and Sogs capitalizes as well.
Just immense amounts of pressure are being put on a TBD on site. They can't sit comfortably. They're moving around constantly, and this attack is another variation to what we've seen LFO doing. TBD just can't catch a break in terms of their adaptation. Tried to make some changes, but it's just not working out. Mango's just potatoing on those drones. And LFO in the box seat to take this round with a 2-man advantage.
And Mango's also missed the opportunity to deny the study wall using the Cade trick as well. So, once again, missed opportunity for TBD. And Angmo is opening everything he wants to, including the back of It Isn't Nasty's head, I suppose, but doesn't matter. In a 4 versus 2, LFO is still very much in the driver's seat.
Yeah, Plant's going down, completely uncontested. Ipitstyle finally pushes through, denies the cover, but he is refragged beautifully. Bring it to a 2v1. Plant down, all up to Joker on TBD. Sees one, makes it a 1v1, but beautiful refrag from LFO. Closing the round out at 5-1 for the half.
Can you imagine it? A 5-1 half on what I had written in my prep. I had written best map for TBD since they're undefeated since the 9th of January on this map. TBD have not lost. They've beaten teams like Fnatic, Wildcards, Sinister, Kangar. The last time they lost this was a 7-3 to Ferox way back on January 9th. And man, times have changed. LFO, they come up back in January 9th. Like, what was LFO? Were they a team back then? I mean, maybe they were playing in, I don't think LPL Pro was on yet, but they surely were playing in something. Wasn't, I don't think, I'm going to gamble and say that, like, at the very least, they weren't a pro level team.
I'm pretty sure they were playing in LPL Amateur, so even a step below from LPL Pro, and they were known as 1NE. They didn't have Hills back then. I can't remember who they had, but I'm pretty sure I actually cast an online game of theirs quite a while ago. Yeah, so they've really developed and changed, and one thing is, I think they've had a pretty consistent roster, and for a T2 team, especially in ANZ, it's not as common as you'd expect.
Someone pick these boys up, please. TBD as well. Pick both of these. Pick all these teams up, please. Thank you. All right.
I have a point about the Fnatic TBD game as well. I remember, in fact, pretty sure I casted it. It was a 3-3 first half. TBD were on defense, and then they just really ran over the top of Fnatic on their attacks. Fnatic really struggled to deal with TBD's aggression. So that's something that I think LFO need to be worried about. But considering the prep it seems like LFO have done so far, I'm sure they're well aware of that.
Well, there is an opportunity for redemption here for TBD. Like you said, in that Fnatic game, their attacks looked unstoppable, and that's what we're going to need to see from TBD here. Anything less is just not going to be acceptable. From TBD's perspective, they either need a flawless attacking half to take this straight in a reverse sweep, 7-5, or we need to see them win at least 5 and then win it out in overtime. And look, I mean, has the guess at the chances of TBD coming back from this position? I've seen worse, but TBD definitely on the ropes right now. LFO have such a strong position, and they've chosen Kitchen as their first defensive bomb site. In fact, the only... Oh, sorry, no, this was unsuccessfully defended by TBD. The only one TBD won was Stat and Trophy, which is actually the first point of contention here, upstairs above the bomb site. That's where TBD is intending to clear out. And 1 minute down, not a lot of progress on that front.
And that's a great point about the progress, and I think that's a big difference between these two teams. LFO had that library mudroom control in what felt like an instant when they were attacking Kitchen. And TBD have taken much more time, and I think that's really different for TBD. They've generally been known as a swift-moving, quite aggressive attacking team, and they're just looking... I think they're trying to be patient and disciplined, but it just doesn't look like TBD that I'm used to watching.
And the player that we're used to talking about on TBD, who is that aggressive player finding all these kills, that's it, be style, and yet to show up, I think, really present in this game. Cutie as well, he's 3-6 right now, and he's the guy last week that really hard carried TBD through their games.
Yeah, you're totally right. They've really struggled to get into the game so far. Maybe they are just shaking off a bad start to the map in general, but either way, finally putting some pressure on site. Sogs was taken low, so that's pretty important considering he's the smoke player. Could be very instrumental into the late rounds. His vertical holes are going to help them a lot to clear out side as Jack Daddy does see a Yoko go past. He's going to scan that out with his IQ scanner and see if he can actually get it, but not able to spot it. Opening death finally happens. It's Mims getting it, so LFO, again, up into the man advantage here.
Cutie does get that second pick, though. Itby Style jumps in as well, so that's a great start here, but really it's going to have to finish quickly. 20 seconds left, an aggressive position from Mims. Presence from all angles. He does get taken out, and that gives the control of the diffuser back to TBD. 2 players left from LFO to clutch this out, but there's very little time remaining. No C4 in Angmo's hands. Can he deny this plant? Looks to cross, but gets taken out, and there you go. Finally, in the just dying moments of the round, TBD secures it.
Yeah, not a very successful retake or attempt at stopping that plant from LFO. They just didn't really have the manpower. Angmo, just a matter of timing there. He really just missed that cross of the planter. If he was able to get that kill, that could have played out very differently considering the lack of time that TBD had in that execute phase. Regardless, they finally got another round on the board that eases a little bit of pressure, but it's 3 rounds that they need to tie it up. And as you were saying before, they need to prevent LFO from getting at least 1 round if they want to stop it from getting to overtime.
I've got to say here, LFO, for them that round, it was actually very close. TBD did let that timer slip a little bit scarily too far towards 0. And if you're at TBD right now, every round is important to regaining that momentum for warming up, which is great. But if you're LFO, you lose 1 defense, so what? You can retry that bomb site, or you can go to any of the other bomb site, any other of the 4 bomb sites on this map. So there's not a lot of pressure on the defensive side, right? If you're losing a lot of attacks in a row, then it should in theory get progressively easier because you're going to have to rotate through the defender's weaker sites. But if it's the defense that's losing these rounds, they can just keep on trying whatever site that they want. And the attack is always going to have to bring a mindset and a lineup of operators that will be applicable to any of the possible bomb sites.
Totally right. And that's something great about TBD's lineup, at least, is it's very universal. You could bring this lineup to every site and you'll be able to do what you need. It does lack a little bit in projectile soft breach other than the Zofia. I mean, if the Zofia dies early, they're not really going to have a chance to clear things like shields, for example. But other than that, it's very versatile.
Same thing you said about LFO's lineups, right? No grenades and no ash.
True. Yeah, true.
It's the retry of that same bomb site, however. Sorry, no, it's not. Upstairs. Stat. So just directly above the previous bomb site. Forcing TBD to likely take that same map control. They'll go for... No, I don't think they are going to try and press the study side. At least not for now. Mostly a master push. There is that Cade of Mims alongside the Bandit. A lot of wall deny up here. And just the lone Hibana of Mangoes. However, it is successful in opening up one of these key angles. Not sure exactly where that was. But drones thwarted when trying to enter here in the bathroom. making things a bit slower here for TBD. And Mim still has that main triple wall of Master still secure, so that single Hibana pellet that detonated must have been on the bathroom wall.
Yeah, and the fact that there's just no pressure coming from the study side, and not as much happening vertically. I mean, this is the downside to not bringing something like a buck, for example. It can be quite helpful getting that triple open. But that's nasty, taking some shots, tagged very, very low now. Yeah, I feel like this round could come down to the absolute final seconds from TBD, given the pace of everything right now.
But there is that first pick for them. Cutie takes down Nasty, and Jack Dad, I think he was downstairs previously. Also adds to it. Pushing up from the Astro stairs, and this puts LFO in a difficult position where they don't have that Astro control. And they'll start to be encircled here. A C4 still in hand will help take out that diffuser. Planto, if someone does go for it, but now that control is just spiraling here from Astro. Another pick, and it's just onto Sogs now. He's taken out a flawless round for TBT. That's one way to get back in the game.
Yeah, that's going to give them a bit of a confidence boost. And man, we're seeing a dramatically attacker-sided Villa, which is not a common sight. But look, this is a great comeback from TBD at this stage. They've still got another couple of rounds to at least even it out. And LFO look to be struggling a bit on these defense. Not too sure exactly where it is. I just think TBD they're being pretty thorough, and I just think they're not allowing LFO to pull out any surprises that's going to affect them. I just feel like the fire that TBD is playing with is maybe a lack of time.
Yeah, I agree. And maybe if we saw some picks onto those operators that would delay that time, things like the smoke, we could see a change of tack here for LFO. I think Angmo actually random picked there, so he gets onto the bandit. Not sure if that warden was intentional, but it is stuck. I don't really know the idea. Typically, warden is regarded as only super impactful when there's a ying or a heavy smoke-based execute. TBD bringing 0 smokes and not really emphasizing the flashes to my knowledge. I don't quite know the idea there. I mean, if you just want a shield and a shotgun and a like SMG secondary, pick smoke, in my opinion. It's the better overall, but there has to be some kind of idea here with the warden.
Yeah, I think it comes down to two things. There's either some kind of idea in this strategy that we are struggling to figure out, or maybe, like you said, if Angmo did get random onto that dock, maybe it was just more important for them that he played the bandit and Nasty. So,
Yeah.
a simple situation like that, we'll have to wait and see whether this warden works out. But as you were saying, I don't think it really hard counters anything that TBD have. Normally, we've been seeing it picked to counter a ying, for example.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I would love to see a smoke here. I think it would be a great way to exploit TBD's time weakness. And also, on top of that, you get your shotgun for rotates, you get the SMG-11, which is a fantastic weapon to be used as a primary in gunfights. And you've got that shield as well, which clearly, I'm assuming that's part of the reason why they picked the warden for that shield, but it remains to be seen. And warden is just playing on site as well. Not even trying to contest a position like top round where you might see the stuns used.
Yeah, that's very true.
Downstairs control taken. Clearing out the utility is Jack Daddy, very similar to what we saw from Kills when LFO was attacking.
Aggressive map control already taken from TBD there, top of Brown. And starting to push onto Classical Hall. That's going to put a lot of pressure onto side for LFO, and a bit of emphasis as Ippy style creeps down this hallway. Very much aware of that person at 90. That could have been disaster for LFO. But speaking of disaster, they have lost that opening death.
Good start. Hills does get the reply there with Ippy style taken out. But I believe this is... Where are those Hibana pellets? Is that 90 wall? I think it is a vault wall. That'll open up a good avenue to cut off some of these key anchor positions, and you can see LFO pushed into just the corner. No, okay, and it was in fact the study wall that was taken out. The Maestro is spotted on site. People are going to be aware of that position now. He's just waiting for this pressure to come on. Another set of Hibana pellets goes off, assumingly on the study wall, but Sogs finds that kill onto Mangoes, putting his team in the numbers advantage here, 4 versus 3.
Attackers recovered the bomb diffuser.
And that's the diffuser down there, so they're going to have to recover that if they want to try and get the execute. Cutie's going to air jab off 90 just to ensure he doesn't get flanked. There are still players off site. It was Sogs though, so Jack Daddy has cleared that out. Remaining LFO players are on site. Mim's still in a pretty strong position here with the older. Could have quite the impact considering there's no crouch holes through into bar. If they want to execute there, they're actually going to have to go through the doorway or prone through one of those holes, which I really don't think is going to be the play.
Pulling that long line, Hills eventually does secure the headshot. Cutie goes down now, pushing up from landing. Hills seems very aware of this position taken by Jack Dad, and he's going to wide swing this, no doubt. No, backing off, goes for the wide swing, sees the head, but doesn't land a single bullet. Jack Dad pushing on through, and no doubt that's where the stick has to come through. Jack Dad for another, the 2K on the round, looking for the last one, and there he gets it as well. Joker with the injure, and that's TBD coming in the final seconds and making it work.
Yeah, again, it really could have gone the other way. Came down to that 1v1. It was just Mims that got downed in the games room, unable to assist. They've been close rounds, and I mean, that was almost as close as it gets. Little time, 1v1. Very much could have been LFO's round, but the TBD comeback train is really picking up speed now. It's 3 rounds in a row, 1 away from tying it up, and that's going to be starting to put a bit of pressure back into LFO's court.
Yeah, once upon a time we were thinking, wow, LFO, all you need is 1 round and you at minimum secure overtime and you're on match point, ready to take it all the way here on your map pick. And then suddenly TBD switched onto the attack and there you go, they're back in the game. Just like you said, in that Fnatic match back last season, TBD's attacks look so strong.
Locate and defuse as many bombs as they can.
Yeah, and I thought that LFO might have been able to deal with that a bit better, namely because they would have had that VOD to watch. They are also pretty equipped to deal with that kind of stuff. I mean, their playstyle that I've seen on defenses in other maps is somewhat aggressive, or just able to handle aggression a little bit better, but TBD just... they're playing a different style of aggression. They're being very thorough, and then when they finally get close to sight and lower time, and they've worked a couple of picks, that's when they're starting to push deep. I mean, that push from Jack Daddy in through the Aviator was really critical to that round being won there, because if he hadn't done that, I mean, LFO had great positions, and Mims, especially on the Maestro, he had a great position with that older. He could have had a massive impact.
Attacker's objective is to locate
Yeah, and
bomb
like you were talking about with Jack Daddy pushing last minute, in an alternate reality where LFO picks smoke that round, and then the last 30 seconds, that door is just gassed up the entire time, Jack Daddy can't push through there. And you assume that LFO wins that round. LFO finally have whipped out the smoke, isn't nasty, moves off the Warden, maybe indicating that it was a mistake previously. But I have a lot more faith now that we do have the smoke on the board.
Yeah, you could be right, and that could have really hurt them in that previous round, and who knows, it could have gone the other way. We'll finally see whether it is going to be the case there. TBD going to be taking that north control towards Astro, sussing out what LFO are doing. And Sog's actually on a deep roam around the red stairs there. All by himself. We can see the rest of the LFO players are on or around site. So if TBD can isolate that roamer, that's going to be potentially a free pick, but if they haven't spotted him, that could be the thorn in their side.
Jack Dad did have a drone in this hallway though, just above Sogs, underneath one of these little half tables. Sogs also, you assume, has a C4 in his pocket. He could go for a C4 to someone at top of landing stairs. And here the hunt is on. Cutie and Jack Dad looking to cover Astro. An air jab goes out. Cover off that flank. Definitely cautious of this roam. Also cautious of aggression out from the main doors of the objective. Half the round subsided. And TBD still aware of this roam. Sogs needs to be careful of when he goes to that flank. He takes down that drone.
Attackers have located
This is good.
a
It
bomb.
means that they don't know where he is anymore, and they don't have a drone to continue watching that. Have to dedicate a whole player to it. This could be
Yeah, he's
part of the
really
reason
wasted.
why... Sorry, you continue, please.
I was going to say, he's really wasted a lot of time. I think that's also a really big factor considering we've pointed out that's such a weakness for TBD on these attacks.
Pushing up through classical hallway now. Really wary here, it'd be style. And from the TBD side of things, we still don't have any of these walls open, and that's what happened. Okay, there you go. The one wall open, looking to cut off Vault. I mean, I'm just casters cursing myself every second, aren't I? The Joker does find that first kill, though. Eventually, the roamer is shut down. That's Sogs. And now TBD can wholeheartedly focus on the objective. Joker forcing that plant down. The smoke isn't hitting him somehow. A C4 goes out, but it's shot as well. No, it's not. The plant is denied and now forcing into the next position. It's Cutie. It's still a numbers advantage, and then the wide peek from Mims does secure it in such a good spot now. With that plant just on the horizon, Ippy Style makes an entry. 3 versus 2. Numbers advantage on TBD's side, but all LFO has to do is deny this plant. Do they have what it takes? Another injure comes out, and the clutch must come from Isn't Nasty, but it's not there, and TBD take that round and then tie up the scoreline.
Oh, that was a hectic finish there. There's so many denials coming out, and I have to point out that the critical point for LFO that really, I'm not going to say cost them the round, but I think it was a big mistake, was Mims had a great position on the side of the aviator doorway, and I don't really feel like TBD knew that he rotated into that aggressive spot. He wasn't getting pressure from Study, and he decided to peek out towards top of red stairs. Ippy Style just a bit quicker got the frag, but I really feel like with the shotgun, he could have sat there more patiently and might have been able to get at least an extra pick, which could have been all the difference for them.
Yeah, I totally agree. By the way, the Jackal is banned, which is something I was going to talk about last round, but then I looked at the top and it says Maverick is banned. So the Jackal is actually banned, not Maverick. So what I was going to say is I was going to describe Sog's playstyle, how he was going for that really deep roam, and that is only possible because that Jackal was banned. Otherwise, they would have had Tabson in the whole time. In the end, it didn't matter so much because Sogs was eliminated as the first pick without really having an impact. I wonder whether TBD actually went to hunt down Sogs, or whether Sogs maybe went for his flank a little bit too early and they were able to shut that down, because I wonder what would happen if Sogs just completely ignored everything. TBD would have to stick a player watching that flank the whole time, and I think that would really make it a lot more difficult for TBD to execute. Still, it's just conjecture at this stage, difficult to really come to a conclusion on that at all.
Attackers must locate and defuse a bomb.
Yeah, really good point about the impact Sogs could have had if he'd played more patient. Always a bit of a relief when you know that you've killed the roamer that was just hanging out off the map for most of the round. Interesting pre-place C4 as well that we just saw from Nasty at the front door there. Jack Daddy scans that section, of course. He's going to be able to spot that out nice and early and clear it out. Curious to see how LFO are trying to utilize that.
Well, I assume it comes out. Yeah, there you go. You can see it on your scanner right now. Just to the top of classical stairs. A little on the other side of that camera. I expect Jack Daddy will see that. Hopefully we get to see him spot that. He's probably looking, thinking, what is that over there? 18 meters away. Ippy Style likely going to be looking for it. I think he's underneath it. There you go. Takes out that C4. Good eye and good teamwork from TBD.
Yeah, I mean, there's a chance that could have been very sloppy. Jack Dad just taunting the cam a little bit. There's a chance, you know, with a bit of sloppy droning or sloppy IQ scanning there, that could have been missed. So maybe worth the attempt there from LFO. But it's a C4 that's not going to have a play in denial, which could be very important for them later in the rounds. TBD again being very structured, very organized and controlled with their attacks. It's seemingly a little bit different to what we've seen from them before, but it's worked out fantastically so far. I mean, they've had 4 rounds in a row now where they've won.
And very much like we were saying in the first half, LFO was looking unstoppable. Now TBD looking very much unstoppable. That flank likely denied effectively by that Claymore. Very difficult one to spot of red lasers on the red stairs. There's map control taken quite effectively so far. Mango's with the first pick. Angmo goes down.
A bomb has been located.
Now a moment of quiet really is TBD just continuing to take this map control. No players on the top floor. This is typically where we see that floor opened up. Jack Daddy doesn't have breaching charges, so we'll have to rely on the rest of his team to do that. Strong presence in kitchen though. Memorial attempting to be cleared out. C4 blind, misses its target. Now angles on the bomb site being opened up. We can see the defenders running around. Sogs and Joker trade. And Mango's pushing in. What? How do you win that, Hills?
No. No way. Hills won a fight that he just definitely shouldn't have won. And that means Diffuser is down in laundry. Hills is going to retain that position. And the hatch isn't open. Mims takes a long shot onto Ippy Style as he tries to enter dining. It's up to Cutie and Jack Dad in a round that really looked like it was going to be TBD's, but some critical errors here.
No way!
Probably going to cost them.
10 seconds remaining.
Just Cutie left, and he gets taken down by the end of it. Insult to injury. As LFO lock it out in the final moments. Echo drone still up as well. So perfect. Those Echo drones, I mean, I would love to commend LFO and say that using that Echo is another great way to exploit TBD's late pushes, but it didn't even matter in the end because TBD weren't in a position to plant. And that was really thanks to, I think, Hills going for that aggressive peak really made the difference here. And that's this one you're looking at right now. Mid-reload and goes for that kill. Manages to down one of the players on this drop as well. So essential.
Yeah, there's a lot that went right for LFO, and as you said, it really did come down to that play from Hills. It facilitated everything swinging back into their favor. They're going to reattempt Aviator games, and I mean, they've lost it twice in their defense half, but they've both been relatively close. We criticized the second time they attempted it, where it was just a play from Mims that could have gone the other way. And then the first time they attempted it came down to a 1v1. So it's been really close both times that they've defended it so far, and I feel like they've identified, hey, this has been our closest attempt at the other failed sites. Let's go for it.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, on top of all that, we do have Mims getting on that Echo and Isn't Nasty on the smoke. So both of the operators that I was kind of highlighting as what I thought to be the key ones that LFO weren't bringing, at least at the start of their half, they have completely integrated into their lineup, and I really like that. We've seen the Mute be super effective as well at denying that drones previously, and the Cade, which we did see teased out earlier, I don't think has been super effective. I like the idea of going for that Cade trick, but with Thatcher on the board, we're just seeing consistently TBD double Thatchering any walls that they're opening with Hibana.
Yeah, given the way that TBD have been attacking with a bit more structure and patience, I like the idea of just focusing on things that are about delay and denial. We talked about it a lot, TBD taking a lot of the regulation time for their attacks to get something organized. So the lineup that LFO have definitely feels on point to me. And I'm curious to see how that affects TBD. They've even brought the Sledge instead of the Zofia, which I think was to counter something, maybe just have more ability to, you know, destroy some flooring, but I think that's going to come back to hurt them.
Yeah, well, maybe they were preempting a different bomb site. I'm not sure. Not a lot you could use the sledgehammer on here. But nonetheless, one thing I do want to be cautious of, if I'm Mims right now, I'm thinking about those Echo drones he's pre-placed and how every round TBD have Jack Daddy going downstairs and just clearing out all the util. That could be one of the reasons they went for the sledge. Using that grenade through the floor, it nearly takes out Sogs. No doc means that they're not going to be able to heal him up. Now, really cautious about these angles through the floor. But as I was leading to earlier, Jack Dad is downstairs and he's going to be looking for those yokai drones. There's the first one. He takes it out and maybe Mims will be kicking himself for not keeping that one in the pocket until late rounds.
Jack Dad has just been so effective on this IQ. He's really been using the scanner a lot. And I mean, like, of course, that seems like it should be obvious. It's not always the case. And I mean, he's been very thorough with it and he's been covered well by TBD to facilitate him using it. It's helped them a lot with these attacks. So I think there's a massive amount of credit to go to Jack Dad in order for TBD to be able to do so well.
Hibana pellets being used. Ooh, preventing that aggressive push there is a nice one. A shield also on the bomb site is relocated to prevent a different push. I like that from Nasty. Now he's protected from the A door instead of the B door. Hibana pellets completely exposed that position behind the bar. Despite that, we do have the aggressive peek there from Mangoes, takes down Mims, and those yokai drones won't be able to be utilized any longer.
Really important point because they were very helpful in the final moments of that previous round on Kitchen. Cutie's going to be holding that flank nicely around 90, so this execute is pretty well set up here to go into bar. It's a matter of denial here. Nasty is going to be the key to that. He still has one smoke babe in the pocket, but it doesn't matter. Mangoes is actually in, and that plant is going to start going down now, Dev.
Joker finds that lead-off kill as well, but Mango's so low on HP, the kills are going his way, but he gets injured, and that's the diffuser on the floor. Surely TBD are going to fight for these kills now. Just Sogs and Nasty left. All on Sogs now, just low HP. This plant has to be forced down. It's going to go into the zero. The overtime of the round. Where is Sogs, and can he make it work? A C4 comes over, and he gets the triple kill. It's a 1 versus 2 now. Cutie, so low on HP, but peeking on through. TBD send us into overtime.
Oh, that C4 could have been massive if it hit the mark, but just a little too late. Plant did go down. TBD, as you said, have secured overtime. Whoa, it's neck and neck now, Dev. This has been a pretty insane map so far.
Yeah, honestly, right now, like I'm standing in my bedroom right now, and I've literally kicked my chair away. I'm standing up to cast this one, and my headphone cable isn't even long enough for me to properly stand up. So this is getting too intense, and there are physical constraints, and I'm just not okay with it, Raven.
Yeah, and now look, it's interesting because TBD are the ones that are going to be attacking in overtime. I mean, most people would be choosing defense for overtime halves, but considering the way this is played out, 2 defense round wins in the entirety of what we've seen so far is pretty surprising. So TBD going in with the attack is going to be favoring them in this instance.
Defuse as many bombs as they can.
That's a good point, actually. I need to update that in my spreadsheet. TBD, OT, start attack. Bam! So yeah, good point there. But that said, LFO are going to kitchen dining, which is the only bomb site that they were actually successful at so far in their defensive half. So they'll have to repeat that. Remember, this was the round where we saw Hills just go forth and delete Mangoes while reloading in that peak into Laundry. And I think that was one of the key aspects to LFO locking that round out. So I really feel like if you ask me which team has been closer and on their winning their defenses, I feel like there have been more close rounds for LFO. I don't know if that's tinted because TBD are so slow with their pushes and it always comes down to the last few seconds. But I feel like LFO are consistently a hair's breadth away from locking out these defenses.
Yeah, no, I'd have to agree. I think there was one flawless round, which I'm pretty sure was the stat trophy round. And LFO haven't gone back there since. I think they just admitted defeat, like, TBD were too good attacking that, let's not even try. Besides that, though, most of the rounds have been quite close. There was a couple of 1v1s, some really big post-plant situations there, and, I mean, even the round they did win on defense, that kitchen round, that could have gone either way as well. So, it's just generally been quite even.
Yeah, for sure. Now, there is this roam upstairs. It's mainly just Ungmo, and he's not supported by anyone. Cutie has a drone on 90 and also a peek from the 90 window, so I'm a bit concerned for Ungmo here. He's already died twice as the lead-off kill playing the Jaeger on this roam. He has that repel inside, and that just makes him want to peek so much, but I'm so scared for him. So it hasn't been working out recently. Hills is downstairs, might be able to go for a C4. Not sure what kind of information he has upstairs. There, that C4 does go out. Injures Cutie, in fact. No securer of that kill. But at least that's a lot of health damage. Even when Cutie eventually does get revived, will only be 1 shot away from death, and that'll make such a difference late in the round.
Yeah, that's going to stall out TBD a little bit as well. They're going to be a little bit more thoughtful as they progress there. Jack Daddy doing a great job again clearing utility. Over half the rounds ticked away. Not massive amounts of action. Again, TBD just being very thorough and controlled with their approach. Only just now taking statue, but Angmo fights back, peeking at the right time. That is Cutie down. Would have only taken 1 shot there from the Jaeger. LFO are looking pretty good at the start of this round.
This roam clearly pressuring TBD, but they're just going to put some nomads and some claymores down and start focusing on the bomb site. Mim's aggressive in Laundry again. Second time Mangs has died to the same ploy. Holding this aggressive angle, and that's the 3rd time that the diffuser has been dropped by TBD in or around Laundry. Now holding this long angle, Mims is so confident on this one, deals a lot of damage, but Ippy Style finishes off Angmo elsewhere. Starts to push on in, near towards China. 30 seconds left, and we're in a 4 versus 3. TBD need to get their act together here in the dying seconds.
I was just thinking, are they going to put any pressure from China? And that's where Ippy Style has gone now. But there's so much against them, and that's a nice shot there from Sogs, means that all going in towards LFO. It's up to Jack Daddy to clutch this round out. He finds one, but time ticking away. He doesn't have a lot of it. He also is just going to back out, and that's not going to stick. And we're going to see LFO secure that first round of overtime.
Wow, Jack Dad, way to make that so anticlimactic, eh? I mean, that's the 3rd round of defense that has been won this entire game, and Jack Dad just decides, no, I'm going to save the KD. It's also, interestingly, the 1st round that has been won by the timer this entire game.
True, yeah. We haven't seen that happen at all. Changes things a little bit there. And look, TBD rotating to Aviator Games now, which was a side that they didn't have success on at all in their defense half.
Yeah, moving on to Aviator is a scary prospect for them. In fact, they tried it twice at the start, lost it twice, decided, okay, better not. And then by the end of their defensive half, TBD were thinking, okay, let's go retry Aviator, and they did go there once again.
Attackers need to
But they
locate
lost it
and
anyway.
defuse bombs.
Still, LFO got the lead-off kill and the plant down to secure that one out. I'm a little bit surprised that there is the decision here to stick this Kaid. It was something that TBD had brought, in my assumption, to trick the Hibana pellets, like we saw from both of these teams to try doing that. But then that Thatcher just kind of puts an end to that party, because you can just throw 2 EMPs and it ensures that that Electric Claw can't deploy in time to destroy the X-Kairos pellets.
They do have the additional wall denial there with the Bandit though. So they might be able to get some kind of tricking going on.
Yeah, I haven't actually seen a Bandit trick this whole game, and I'm pretty sure Bandit's been picked nigh every round. And yet all these walls do seem to be getting opened. But that said, you know, TBD do play this slightly differently to how LFO do, with a lot of shields, a lot of deployable shields, the Goyo, and previously 2 other shields, just the 1 other this time from the smoke, to hold top round and all the rest of it. But we haven't seen that presence top round be super effective. At least not when... I mean, it was a while ago that LFO was attacking, right? We're talking the first half of this game, but you can harken memories back to that. It didn't go so well for TBD. And like you alluded to, TBD haven't actually won this bomb site yet this map.
Yeah, they attempted it 2 times in a row at the start of the first half there, all the way back. Feels like a long time ago, like you said. But they lost both. LFO getting the plant down in that first round as well. So that shows that they really had a solid attack to be able to get that control to get the plant down. Makes you definitely concerned for TBD. LFO have started to make some progress towards 90. It is Joker sitting offsite there on red stairs, so they're expecting some presence and a bit of a push from the north side, but it actually feels like LFO are somewhat ignoring that side of the map.
Is this a possible trick of some kind with the C4 and impact? Not sure. But LFO do seem to really be trying to push up these brown stairs. They got to worry about that angle in from behind the bar. Getting shot from so many angles. Sogs just funneling up here. Hills decides to take the initiative and go forth. There's no one at top brown. And, well, it was a bit of a struggle, but LFO do have this control. How much is it going to net them, though? An aggressive peek from Hills, who just keeps white pinging that. And he does take down Jack Dad for it.
And there was a TBD player at 90 who just didn't re-peek. I feel like Ipisal could have easily got a simple refrag. That classical hallway is pretty long, bar door being at least a third of the way up. Missed opportunity there. It means that LFO do have man advantage now coming into this. And oh, he does trick the pellets, so it's a great job from the Kaid. Maybe the EMPs not used effectively there. Actually, they're all out, so no more angles to be held open, and TBD have regained the man advantage now.
Without these avenues into the bomb site from the Hibana, it's going to be so difficult. But Ungmo still has 2 X-Kairos in the pocket he could attempt to use. But maybe it's partly due to that lack of a Thatcher. It's just options are so limited, and if Style gets his second on the round. Now, this is well and firmly in TBD's grasp, and it'll have to be a desperate attempt through the study door. We're going all the way to the final round here, as both teams in an attacker-sided game win their defenses in OT.
Yeah, I actually can't believe we just saw back-to-back defense wins after the entirety of the regulation time. But it looked strong for TBD. I mean, LFO, they did a great job to get that early brown stairs control, and the aggressive peek onto site was fantastic, but they lost so much HP on a lot of different players in the process. So that meant that the subsequent gunfights were just that bit easier for TBD. They didn't have to have as much of a reliance on hitting headshots, for example. So I think that really works into their favor. And Dev, LFO are picking Library.
Whoa. All right, it had to be the final round of the entire game. We get a look in of that 4th bomb site that no one else has picked yet. But I had previously written down stats because that's where they had locked in. They can't go back to kitchen because they already won it in overtime. But here's a curveball to throw TBD's way. I mean, if you're picking Living Library, you're not necessarily super confident in your defenses for it. If you've gone 6 or 7 defenses so far and haven't picked it, but you're thinking, maybe we can be better at defending this than they can be at attacking this. It's a huge gamble for LFO going into this round.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they do have like a really well thought out pocket strat for this that TBD don't know of. I even wonder whether maybe that's why TBD brought that sledge on that previous attack round that we questioned it. Maybe they were expecting this to be picked out because sledge could be pretty effective for attacking this. But they've outfoxed them. No sledge in this lineup, so verticality is going to come in the form of those breach charges, which they do have 6 of.
Yeah, I mean, on top of this, we've got LFO finally really playing into the... I don't know what the exact word is, but the kind of the heavy utility that needs explosives to destroy it. We've got castle barricades, maestro cameras, and Goya shields. That is what, 7 different things that can only be destroyed by explosives or the EMP, I guess, for the maestro cameras. And we only have just the 2 impact on it be style. So TBD's gonna have to be very careful about where they use their utility to make sure they can clear out this defensive setup. And what is this setup? I've never seen anything quite like that.
Yeah, this is definitely out of left field, and I think that could really work in favor. I mean, TBD have been slow with their attacks already, and they're going to be droning this out, and they're probably thinking, what? And I'm sure they're going to be working it out as they go, but I just think that's going to create some stall points, and it really could be the make or break of TBD here. If they stall out a lot, and LFO manage to hold on to at least an equal man count, and the late round could be really towards LFO.
I really like this setup from LFO. Ooh, close angle Mims. Just looking for that head. But these breaching charges are going to be mincing up the floor and exposing the positions from LFO. They'll just try to sit pretty downstairs. LFO has essentially turned the entire of this bottom floor into their territory with these castle barricades, but the Hibana is going to deal with that nice and swiftly. Sogs decides he's going to commit. He's not going to back on out with that being destroyed. He's going to hold here and hope that he doesn't get droned out. Looking for a drone now, aiming at feet level, but I don't think if Style's aware. He does whiff 2 shots and sees Ippy on the cross, but I don't think Style is aware of it, and this flank from Sogs could make the difference. He gets one onto Ippy, waiting for the repick. I think that's Jack Dad, but he is taken out. Traded there by Mango's Mims with the C4. There's still a minute to go. TBD are down to 3 players, but so are LFO.
Yeah, and TBD have started to get a lot of good control that's coming from the vertical holes there, and they've now pushed down around Library. So they're in a pretty good position to be able to get some kind of execute happening. Mango's is in fact on site with Diffuser. So that could be something that happens soon. He's getting zapped from an Evil, I believe. Just lost a bit of damage. And the ping's coming out. So the position's known here for LFO, and it's going to come down to this retake strat in this final 30 seconds.
Cutie for another one. Still that plant not going down. Just 20 seconds ticking away. Mangoes tries to stick it. Just leaves it on to Cutie and Joker to cover. Cutie's so far away, so it's really just Joker. But there you go, the plant denied by Ungmo. 13 seconds, someone has to replace him, but Ungmo for the double. All on Cutie now, finds one. 1 versus 1. Cutie versus Hills for the map, for the end of Villa after these 15 rounds, and Hills is just waiting. He hears that plant goes down, and he knows this map is his. It doesn't matter if Cutie sticks it or not. And there, LFO edge out, map number 1 in this series.
Oh, what a series it was. Coming down on 1v1, that really felt like it was fitting to how everything played out. A solid map from both teams in the end, neck and neck. And Mims backing up a big week 1 MVP effort. Actually takes out the MVP of this map as well. I saw him joke on socials he was probably going to drop a donut. No, actually, Mims, you're not going to drop a donut. You're actually going to finish top of the ladder.
And in fact, we saw the 4 players from LFO all above 11 kills. 11 and 13, I believe it was. And poor Nasty just on 4, but we saw some good impact kills from Nasty as well. Wow, what a wild ride that was. We've been treated to some amazing siege so far tonight, and that's only map 1 of 4 of what we got. I don't think I've ever really seen a setup quite like that for Living Library. And what a way to close out the map with style.
Yeah, it was a really cool setup, and it seemed like it did the job. I mean, it stalled out TBD a little bit, and they had to really think through what they were doing, and even just simple mistakes in their process. Once they got down towards the pottery room and they started to clear out piano, for example, and those castle barricades, it's like they just forgot to re-drone the room, or maybe they didn't drone it in the first place. And that can just come down to being a little unsure of your attack, you know, not as well drilled on it. So simple things like that sometimes just get left off the radar.
Well, so far, you and me are both looking good for our predictions on Snowball. I said LFO for both maps. You said LFO for one and TBD for one. So I think... Oh no, a couple of people said that there was going to be a draw here. So our predictions are still alive, which is really all that matters. And I'm hoping that LFO could get the next one. Not because I'm biased, but just because I want to be right, obviously. So...
Yeah, of course. Yeah, man. But I mean, like, it's well within the realm of possibility. Considering how they played on Villa, I'm super excited for Kafe now.
Yeah, totally. One thing I will say, though, is I was a bit concerned. I mean, going into the first half of that map, I thought, damn, like, this looked to be a good map for TBD. LFO, I actually thought it was probably going to be a better map for LFO than TBD, but sorry, other way around. Better map for TBD than LFO. But LFO, they picked it, right? So they know more than I do about it. They come out of the gate, 5-1 in the first half. I'm thinking, okay, LFO have got this. TBD show us what they're worth on their attacking half. We go to overtime and then our heads explode, whatever. Kafe is another map where I could totally see a strong performance from both of these teams. I've written here, Kafe, best map for LFO. And we know TBD is pretty good on it as well, and they picked it.
Yeah, and on top of that, they actually struggled a little bit last week against Kanga. And if Villa showed us anything, I think a big takeaway for me was that it showed that LFO have clearly done their prep work. And that's probably a bit of an alarm bell for TBD because they showed a lot of weaknesses, you could say, on Kafe last week.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to exploit for LFO. It is 1 map to LFO, 0 maps to TBD. We have Kafe coming to you in just a minute, so don't go anywhere.
Attackers just dropped the bomb. 15 seconds remaining. By attackers. Bomb diffuser. Go. Attackers cover the diffuser. Bomb located by attackers. 10 seconds.
Are you like Caden, who loves to make the most of the slow loading times of his HDD?
yeah. Ay, push start, ayy. Ball so hard, ayy. Raise the bar, ayy. Turn into a star, ayy. Play my part, yeah. I aim too far. I do it big. I keep it large, okay. Live it up. This is fake, better give it up. Young, but I feel like I've seen enough. Numbers going up, better keep it up. Ain't slowing down, better live it up. About too hard, ayy. What? About too hard, ayy. What? About too hard, ayy. About too hard, yeah. I'm killing your favorite rapper, it's minimum effort. Yeah, your coach getting severed. The industry drives
Welcome back to Upsetty Spaghetti Central here in Six Masters. We have a crazy game that we're in the middle of right now, and I can't wait to get stuck back into it. I'm Dev. Raven, someone's got to save me because I don't know what the condition of my heart right now. It's too much to handle.
That was a very close map. I mean, 8-7, it couldn't have gone any closer in terms of round count. And a lot of those rounds came down to the wire. And the last round was a 1v1. It was perfectly played out from both teams. Totally enjoyable. I loved it.
Yeah, I think there's the one thing for sure. It's that our emphasis before this game of how close this is going to be and the audience's impression with that Twitter poll vote getting so close, it's just a perfect reflection of this game that we're in the middle of so far. And what's more, I think we're treated to some really good maps to see these teams. I think both maps where both of these teams show their A game, which gives me an impression that Kafe is also going to be a really good and close show.
Yeah, and I mean, the first map, Villa, was LFO's pick in the end. So they brought that map out on their own terms, which I think showed they had some fantastic attacks, and that library living strat was just out of this world. I think it was pulled out at the right time.
Yeah,
so,
100%.
I mean, I'm curious to see what TBD have on their map pick being Kafe. We've said before that it's also a strong map for LFO. So you have to think that if TBD have done their prep, what have they got on this that's going to be different to last week?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, giving some context to this, like when I was breaking down the maps coming into this game, I looked at Kafe, LFO's experience. They beat Sinister in the LPL Grand Final, the Let's Play Live Pro Grand Final. They also beat Eura twice coming to the qualifiers for this event, and I think it was PC 419 as well, which is another pretty good team that's not in the Six Masters when they were qualifying for this event as well. So that's a current 4-0 record on this map for LFO. And this isn't LFO's map pick, this is TBD's map pick, who played it last week and just edged away a victory 8-6 against Kanga. Now, I mean, I think a lot of evidence points to this being a strong map for both teams.
Yeah, it really does. And I think when it comes down to it, Villa was pretty much the same, and we saw how that turned out. So I think that does just make Kafe all that more exciting to see. The big question mark for me on top of TBD is what have they done to fix the issues they faced last week against Kanga? And I mean, Kanga haven't been a team in fantastic form either. They ended Pro League in pretty poor form, and they played okay against TBD, but they got flawless 3 rounds in a row. That also says something. So I feel like LFO have a chance now to really exploit a lot of stuff that TBD have struggled with.
Yeah, perhaps there are some flags from that last week's game from TBD on Kafe that LFO can exploit. We've got to be a bit concerned about that, but let's bring it back in for a second and talk about where you guys thought this series would end up. We're currently sitting 1-0 up in the series towards LFO. 1 map remains in this best of 2, and we can see, again, the poll vote very much gunning for that draw. A slight favor of TBD. Now, 39% of you, I'm afraid that's just not the case anymore. It's either going to be an LFO 2-0, or we're gunning for that draw. Have you changed your opinion of where we're going to end up, Raven, or are you still sticking to your draw?
I'm still going to stick the draw, but it's so hard to call because, I mean, TBD are a very experienced, strong team. They finished in 3rd place for ANZ Pro League Season 11, and only narrowly at that, close to Fnatic and Elevate. So considering those performances, again, you would really feel like they've got it in them to not only just beat LFO in general, but also to be able to come back from the way that first map played out. But LFO also have it in them to probably create another upset, so I am torn.
I mean, I love championing the underdog story personally, but if we look at TBD for a minute, kind of break down their Kafe, we talked about their match 8-6 against Kanga last week. I'm sure there's a lot that LFO could look at from that VOD and learn to kind of give themselves another leg up over TBD on this map. But TBD, they picked this, right? So they expected that coming in. That was a factor in the back of their minds. TBD also lost this in Pro League, which was only, a month ago, just a bit over a month ago on 26th of March to Elevate. Now that was a bit more of a significant loss, 7-4 against them. So I think it's indisputable that there are some blatant weaknesses from TBD's previous form on this map, but they're the ones who picked it, so they're confident that of all the 5 maps remaining in the pool, this is the one they want to take LFO to.
Yeah, and they really leaned on some strong defenses last week, and that's something that Centis, their new coach manager, pointed out in the interview, was that they feel comfortable and confident in their defenses. So if I'm LFO, I would have been working pretty hard to figure out some counters for that, or just to feel more comfortable in attack, because it was the attack of TBD that showed a lot of those weaknesses to exploit. And if LFO can hold their own in their attacks, well, then I think they're going to put themselves in a really good position to be able to close out the map.
And it was the attacks that we talked about on Villa being so strong for both teams. It was totally attacker-sided map where we had 10 out of the 12 regulation rounds go the attacker's way. And ironically, none of the overtime rounds going the attacker's way at all. But we've seen strong attacks from LFO. We have a decent amount of recent VODs from LFO that TBD could be looking at for their Kafe strats. But that said, it wasn't necessarily VODs where LFO were playing against equal caliber teams. We're talking a 7-2, 7-2 against Eura, a 7-5 against PC419. Now that's a close one, but I haven't checked whether that one was streamed personally. So there's a potential there that TBD don't have a VOD to go through for that one. So I've got to say, I'm not just saying this because I predicted at the start, but I'm leaning towards LFO to take the series here.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. It's hard to call either way just because of how that first map played out in particular. And I mean, you talk about LFO's matches against Eura, quite dominant wins. And Eura is a relatively unknown team, but I mean, they had experienced players on that team. And even though it was in quals, that still counts for something. I think that really just shows the teamwork and the coordination that LFO are bringing to the table is pretty effective.
Well, let's jump straight into it. No more conjecture. It's LFO versus TBD, map number 2. This time we're on TBD's home turf, but they've had rocky performances in the last few weeks. Let's see if the underdogs can make the upset of tonight.
Yeah, let's see what operated bans do, because one thing that could have thrown TBD's defenses right out the window was that clash ban. We will never know how much of an effect that really did have in the end. Maybe we can get some insight in the interviews, but again, LFO pretty good with their bans in terms of how it has actually affected.
Well, Thatcher is the first thing to go, and no surprises here. I mean, even before Thatcher bans were global meta, ANZ was doing it, especially on Kafe. And Ying taken out as well for TBD. That's just a consistent ban on last map. So maybe TBD going with comfort bans rather than the counter bans. But look, I don't have a problem with that. And it got them so close to a victory last time. And Mira again. So exactly the same bans from the TBD perspective.
Yeah, no dramatic changes there from them. And well, my ban on the defense. That's not as common.
Whoever is doing LFO strats, I kind of want to marry them right now. I love the unusual, and you're talking about doing a living library open retake strategy on Villa, and then you're banning, Clash and Wamai. These are counter bans. This is the stuff I love to see. And I mean, I'm not saying it's gonna work out well. I'm not saying that it's a guaranteed victory here, but this is something that I was about to say Mind Freak. They haven't been Mind Freak for a while. TBD, they're going to have to take in their stride here. We know that TBD, especially on the defense, and we'll allude to this more when we get into the second half when they are on defense, but TBD are one of those teams that loves to run that Goyo with the Wamai and really try and protect those shields, but they'll have to adapt a bit when we eventually get there.
They will. I mean, we saw Mango's playing heaps of Wamai on Villa, so it seems like something that TBD have brought quite into their strategies and their playstyle. Have to make an adaptation there as they get into their defense half in the second half, but it is going to be LFO starting out on defense. Traditionally, we didn't talk about this much on Villa, but traditionally Kafe has been defender-sided. I mean, that was the case last week for TBD Kangar. It was a 5-1 half to start it off.
And what, that was 3 of those were flawless, yeah?
Yes, that's right.
10 seconds to insertion.
So, sorry, did you say that TBD were attacking on those on that side or defending?
No, defending.
Defending, yeah, right. So,
Attackers are heading out.
but we're expecting the defense to be the favor for TBD. This is looking for drones from Ungmo. A risky play to run out, look for drones, but I like that. If he did manage to score one, would have been a lot of information damage dealt. And it is the kitchen picked up first. Not the primary bomb site for a lot of teams. Most do tend to lean into that bar, but we've seen LFO aren't afraid of running those castle strats. It looks like what they're doing, they've made a lot of open strategy, open holes to rotate to red hallway from kitchen and the bakery as well. And I guess that means that the Maverick from Mangoes won't be quite as impactful because those key walls that you would be Mavericking open are either already rotation holes or they're just not as relevant. So, interesting changing the environment from LFO.
See whether they are able to change their pace as well. It's something we highlighted as an issue on Villa. It was an issue last week as well in their Kanga match, so have to see whether they've made some changes. Looks like LFO are just spread out on the first floor here, not looking to roam too heavy. Ipistar is going to be the opening death, so again, he didn't really have a massive impact on Villa, not the kind of impact we've seen from him before, and it seems like he might be starting out with a struggle on Kafe.
Ipistar is that player we expect to be getting in a lot of those opening engagements. He was in 3 of them on Villa, but he only won 1 of them. So that makes his KD for this series so far -2. Hasn't been quite on point just yet, but he's got plenty of time to redeem himself.
So far, TBD are leaning into that again, slower, more methodical push. Hill's probably only just emphasized that by getting that opening pick. That generally will slow a team down. Usually advised to accelerate after that. So this is a pretty effective start from LFO in the way that they've neutralized the pace here. Cutie does have a lot of holes with some great vertical play that he can use. LFO doing their best to stay out of them. And again, just staying patient. They're not overpeaking either, which is also a really big plus for them.
And you know there are so many opportunities here for TBD to pinch these attackers on the bomb site with all these holes open and vertical. Mangoes is the first one to find that kill through that open rotate in Freezer. A lot of information from the defense, and Sogs uses that to get himself a kill. Tries to run away from that grenade, but it doesn't work. Mangoes was good for 3 this round so far. Only 2 left, but as we know them, TBD are taking their time. A trade? No! Somehow Joker wins that fight. Ungmo takes down Cutie. It's all up to him now. But time is on his side. Can he deny this diffuser? Plant going down. All he has to do is deny that plant. He does it! And he clutches the rounds. Ungmo doing just the bare minimum he needs to keep his team on top of this series.
Oh, another close round, Dev. I feel like that's... I don't know. I feel like that's foreshadowing for the map, you know? Just the way that Villa played out. And now that round, far out. Couldn't have gotten any closer. Successful defense of the kitchen bomb site starting it off. TBD looks like they were in the box seat, but just slipped away.
And look, was that was a 1v3? Was it 1v4? Surely it wasn't just a 1v2. But man, I mean, you're thinking if you're angry, that should not have happened. That was nuts, man. That's exactly what these guys need right now.
Yeah, totally. I think you could call it a 1v3 because as he got a pick, how his teammate died. But either way, stepping up, really important. And I think a big takeaway as well for how LFO have been playing, not just this week, but last week, they're handling pressure really well. And I don't know whether it's just that they are minimizing the effects of it or they're just not feeling it yet. But I highlighted in pre-show, I thought that after the way they played against Elevate, maybe they would be starting to feel some pressure, given expectations of them are increasing. And TBD, another big team, I mean, that's going to be pressure to back it up, but they've just not seemed affected by it, to be honest.
5 seconds remaining.
That pressure, while you'd think that maybe LFO, the expectation is increasing with that victory over Elevate last week. Like, these guys are still the underdogs. And I think a lot of people are still expecting them to end up at the latter half of the ladder come the end of this season. But already taken one map off of the top-seeded team. Now they've taken a map off the second top-seeded team. I mean, this is just getting better and better for them. And that lack of expectation, that lack of pressure perhaps that they're feeling is helping them out tremendously. That said, Heel's the first one to fall this round.
A little over-aggressive there from Heels. Just looking to get a big run out or something there, but didn't work out. Looks like it would have been refragged anyway by Joker, so nothing going. TBD start that one strong.
Yeah, and Jack Daddy repelling there. It was possible that Hills could have peeked into a position where Jack Dad couldn't have peeked around the corner and looked to his right far enough, but nonetheless, it's a good early start from Jack. Looks like there is a lot of presence on these east windows. Nomad and Claymores to help secure those players, prevent them from being exposed to runouts, but it's not really typically a place where you see a heavy push from on these east windows on Cocktail, but just having that one player there does really help and put some pressure on these Cocktail players.
Yeah, it's often a very neglected part of attacking Kafe. I mean, it's a big comfort of people to open the red stairs hatch, that new hatch drop, take into piano, but they never have a lot of pressure on Cocktail. That means that those Cocktail long angles can be held, and then the rotate through Freezer can happen. So yeah, having some pressure over there is going to be very important. Joker was that man, but he's actually repelled back onto the roof now. This attempted Maverick trick is going to happen, and this was a very popular plan spot for TBD last week against Kanga. I have to wonder whether LFO have read into this and whether they've got a really good strategy of denying it.
I was being a bit cautious of whether this is a Goyo shield, but no. Fortunately, just normal deployable shield. But Angmo is so close around this corner! He manages to kill Mangoes and then get out scot-free, but there is a wide peek from Epic Style unpunished, and that control taken into washrooms as well. No one playing at White Hallway to refrag that one. That risky play from Angmo is eventually punished. It'd be Style for a second now. And this aggressive push does refrag him eventually. Just Sogs are nasty now. No C4 on either of them, but they both used them. But Sogs for another kill up at Pixel. Pushing up through bar now. Jack Daddy securing that diffuser, and it's Joker. Oh, both of them get knocked down, and Joker secures that one. Bit of comedy there for your Tuesday night, but we do have TBD getting that attack.
Yeah, that air jab could have been bad if Joker had lost his gunfight. Well, then LFO probably would have been able to close that one out. Not to be. 1-1, and again, Dev, I think this is really trending towards what seems like is going to be another close map. And this aggressive peek from Angmo, I mean, he took a lot of damage, but to have it completely unpunished, it's just something that LFO have seemed to be able to do so well in this series.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, LFO have continued that aggression despite seeing that Nomads, despite seeing a lot of that Claymores, and very often we are seeing the aggression from LFO get punished. I mean, reference that first kill of Hills getting taken out, running out on that east side. Jack Dad just polishes him off nice and easy. So there is mixed results out of these aggressive players, and for LFO, it really is a difficult judgment game of when to go for them and when to just sit back and maybe just chill out for a second.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're going to repeat the Bar Cocktail bomb site, which, I mean, I'm kind of surprised about. It got a little close towards the end, but I think in general, TBD's attack was quite good. And most teams continue to rotate through bomb sites as they lose them, leaving it open to come back to. So this is kind of against the grain for what a lot of teams like to do.
I know All Mate Monkey Fist would always say 2 and move. You try it twice. If that doesn't work, then by that point, you move on to something else. We haven't reached that threshold yet. Maybe after the next one, we can be pretty critical. But no, I don't blame you, especially when you've got a bomb site like Library. I call it Library. Everyone else calls it Reading. Reading. If it's Reading, like, that's a great bomb site. So you're not really losing much just by heading onto that instead of Bar. By the way, we are just having a quick rehearse, so we'll be back into the game before a minute. But they, like you said, Bar Cocktail's locked in for the next bomb site. I don't know, what do we got to see from LFO to prevent TBD getting that control and having as dominant around as they did just then?
Yeah, well, I mean, like, a factor is simply just Hills dying early. probably getting a little over aggressive. And it's interesting because they didn't do that on Villa. They've played more disciplined with their defenses in general, LFO. I don't think this is the right time to try and be over aggressive either, because TBD have been pretty organized with their flanks and runouts. Their drone placement's been pretty good. They've brought Nomad so many times. So I think for LFO, I would just play into the strength of just delaying TBD as much as possible, and then just countering the execute.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing we talked about, that delay tactic. TBD tend to be really late on their executes, and so often are they trying to force this plant down with less than 10 seconds remaining on the clock. And if you have LFO set up in a position to emphasize that delay, make sure TBD can't be put in a position to get that plant down until those dying moments, and then have some kind of ability to deny that plant, whether it's just Angmo jumping over and killing someone, that's one option, but C4s, echo drones, smoke grenades, these are other options that you have available to you to try and deny the plant in the dying seconds, all of which are available. Like, Echo hasn't been banned here, I will remind you, just Mira and Wamai. So we've seen Maestro picked a lot. Echo's also available to deny the last minute plant. C4s, roam downstairs on that second floor, C4 up. There's a lot of opportunities here for LFO to be playing into that kind of weakness that we've seen exposed from TBD.
And we saw that the Pulse was 6-picked onto just before we did the rehost there for this second attempt. So I really do feel like LFO have read into that a bit. That Pulse is going to be really helpful, maybe playing below. And again, if they can stretch TBD out in how they take their map control, it's going to slow them down a bit. They're not going to get it for free, and they're not going to get it quickly. And for that fact, they might not get it thanks to how strong the roam is. I mean, they could get a pick or two out of it, and that could give them that man advantage leading into the final moments of the round. So I'm curious to see how that Pulse will play out. And also they did have an Echo, I believe. Mims has been playing a pretty good Echo so far, definitely on Villa. So yeah, I think just getting TBD to that late round execute phase is going to be the strat for LFO in terms of securing these defenses.
Yeah, and one thing that is difficult if you're in LFO's shoes, it's not as simple as just, all right, pick Echo, you win, pick a C4, go possible. Because TBD is a vigilant team, right? They're going to see, they're playing so much IQ. Whether you've got a Pulse or an Echo drones, like, they're going to know about it, and they're going to come for you. If you're roaming downstairs, TBD will push players in there and try and hunt you. They're not afraid to do that. And that's something that you just have to be wary of. No strategy is flawless. And I think it becomes a bit of a game of, picking your battles, where you're going to try and fight the enemy, try and fight them on a territory that suits you the most. I don't see that kind of presence around Pixel spot being really successful moving into the future, especially with the Wamai band. You're really exposed to having any shield destroyed by Zephyr charges or what have you, unless if you stack all your ADSs there. I'm not sure whether... Thatcher's banned, so you could actually stack all 3 ADSs on Pixel, but TBD will know about it. They'll have their IQ go and spot all 3 ADSs, so they won't waste a lot of their utility there. And that's just a lot of utility to invest in one spot. So there's no one answer fits all here for LFO, and it's a difficult guessing game of which one's going to be the best option.
Yeah, and like you were saying, there's downsides to dumping all that ADS utility at Pixel, because if they drone that out and identify that, then as you do your main push through bar, projectiles are free game. You can just lob nades through to Cocktail, through to Freezer, from the Skylight or from Cigar. Either way, you can safely do that to help clear out those positions, which gives you easier control of bar or even Cocktail. So yeah, they are things that you have to consider. And the way that TBD have been attacking and the way Jack Daddy's been using IQ on top of that, I think has been really effective. I think a lot of the denial should come with maybe playing more Mute and Mozzie. I think the Mute was quite effective on Villa. I feel like that will continue to have effect on Kafe if they were to stick that.
I'm not sure whether it was Sogs who played the Mozzie last round, but there was definitely a Mozzie player last round, and we saw some utility being placed around the mining area, and like Train, maybe trying to use C4s, lobbing it up through. We've seen a lot of people lob C4s through an open hole in the floor in the roof of Train, and then that lands in Cigar, kills any players funneling through that point. But I think TBD have been very aware of these. Of course, we weren't spectating that side of the map a lot last round, so there's potentially something that we missed by not getting a chance to see it. But like you said, it's just another opportunity there, a strategy that LFO could employ, something that TBD is going to have to deal with. Dude, I don't know, is it just me, or is LFO and TBD, like the fact that they're both 3-letter like initialisms, it just keeps messing with my brain. Oh, dude.
Yep. I was definitely getting that vibe earlier. It was a bit of a struggle, but you're right. And in terms of the Mozzie use below, I mean, that's going to facilitate maybe the use of the pulse in this coming round, because TBD would have known, oh, there's pests down here. Maybe they decided, we didn't see any players rotate there. We can skip that because you have to think about the utility clear. And now that's going to create a bit of a guessing game. They've got a pulse, you're going to have to hard drone it. Oh, there's Mozzie pests in the way. We can't just EMP those, have to clear that to see if the pulse is there. So that could be quite an effective time delay with that strategy.
Yeah. I think that the fact that LFO banned the Thatcher, it kind of emphasizes they're going into a specific playstyle. They want to utilize these operators that the Thatcher would counter, like Jaeger, stacking up ADSs. Thatcher's the perfect candidate to that. Or your wall denial operators like your Bandit, your Mute. We saw Mute going on the walls. It doesn't matter when Mangoes is just going to bring the Maverick, though. And that's the real struggle. I think TBD are doing a really good job of countering this Thatcher ban. It's been meta for a while now, so they know how to deal with it. They bring that Maverick. And I feel like LFO, maybe they're kind of, with that, let's say a Mute Jammer on the wall from Freezer or bar backstore into Piano, right? That Mute Jammer isn't going to have a lot of effect if Mangoes is just going to open that wall using his blowtorch anyway. So sometimes we maybe have some mismatched utility where there's utility being brought by the defense and it doesn't even become relevant because of the way the attackers tend to address that particular part of the map. So maybe there's an optimization that we could see there from LFO. So difficult to know what the right answer is there. So a lot of players just start filling it out.
That was a real missed opportunity, actually, that you bring it up, where I can't remember who the shotgun player was. They peeked out from the bathroom and they killed Mangoes on the Maverick, and he didn't actually have holes through into backstore at that stage. They really had to protect that white hallway better because it was Ipistyle who saw that opportunity, aggressed onto the bathroom, and then he had that control with a long angle through to Cocktail. If they had better protected that white hallway after that pick, then I think TBD would have had a very different round to face.
We'll get to find out how LFO deals with that and how TBD give it another crack on bar backstore in just a few minutes. We're going to go to a quick break, guys, so don't go anywhere. We've got another repeat of that round coming to you real soon.
Maybe you like Caden and Hank, who get a real thrill from the speed of their HDDs.
I see the colors of your soul, and I recognize every single line, every single roadblock. We got two hearts that beat in time, and the towers looking down all night, blocking out the sun that we need. Maybe we can change our stripes and colors. You're the only one I see, and I take it all or nothing at all. Driving through the night till I'm at your door. Go outside, stay up all night, and I take it all or nothing at all. Driving through the night till I'm at your door. Go outside, stay up all night, sleep through the sunrise. peace of mind. Up above us, looking down on us. There's an angel I know. We don't need to worry or discuss much. It's time for me to hit the...
Hey guys, welcome back. We're here again. We just had to deal with a little thing, but now we're all good. So you get to see our beautiful faces again. I know, I'm sure you missed us. We missed you guys too. Raven, in the middle of this game, we're 1 round in, 2 rounds in, on our 3rd round, coming right up.
Yeah.
We're talking about bar and cocktail. What do we need to see? What do we want? What do we want to see?
I want to see some changes from LFO in terms of just stalling out TBD a little bit better and thinking more about the map control that they need to hold on to. The point I was making just before our quick break was that the white hallway became very critical once they killed that Maverick. It meant they could no longer Maverick trick into backstall, for example, or even have a line of sight there. So I think if they can think more broadly about that, they can secure themselves the round.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there was. I think it was Nasty potentially playing near the tarps and near the wood stack in the white hallway, but not clearly not covering the angle that Ippy Style pushed through to kill. I think it was Angmo in washroom. So I would like to see a bit more presence to cover off that aggressive peek from Pixel into white hallway and then pushing into washrooms. Perhaps a player on the white stairs themselves, or just peeking from on the left side of your screen here where you see the wood stack at the top of the stairs. So I don't know, hopefully we see that. That's such a minor, like, little niggle. It's not like, okay, you need to bring this operator or you need to put this utility here. It's just like, you need to watch this angle at all times and ensure that at minimum you get the refrag. But like that's what makes the difference, honestly. It's so important, and we need to see LFO fix that.
Yeah, at top level of Siege, that's all it comes down to sometimes is just really small things. And it seems like it's small, or we can make it sound like it's really simple, but of course it's never quite like that. And I mean, a big part of that is Hills. We talked about how he died early. That spot at top of White Stairs, the tarps area, is a pretty strong spot for a Jaeger to play late round, because he's just got a strong gun at range. He can really contest those attackers trying to peek from Pixel. So just having him alive could be another simple just difference for LFO to have a better chance to close the round out.
Well, have to wait and see whether LFO do make it happen. But for this round, if your style rotated over onto the Ash instead of the Zephyr, not sure the thought process there. Bit of a comfort pick maybe. Maybe he doesn't want the ACOG and he just feels more comfy with the Holo and the R4C. Or maybe he doesn't see the stun, concussions as useful, and he'd rather just get 1 extra projectile with that stun, potentially better for wasting ADSs. But at the moment, he's just turning his attention to this pulse roaming downstairs, who he has droned out, and Sogs drops all the way down to the basement.
Yeah, Sogs is going to wreak havoc a little bit, move around. We saw him do this on Velo, actually. He was playing the Mozzie, and he was often the one for LFO, down around the basement, hanging around bottom of red stairs. Drone of Ippy is actually going to see him in towards kitchen service area there, and it's Jack Dad on the hunt. The perfect operator to counter this pulse, in fact. He's going to see Jack Dad, and T4's coming out. Not going to be any effect. Gunshots, but no actual trade of HP yet.
Dangerous to be using the pulse scanner, and Ippy Style does secure that one, Jack and Ippy. Nice job to pinch that player downstairs, and that's one thing they just don't have to worry about from now on. Nice way to deal with the thing that we were talking about. You know, we mentioned so much during that break about how LFO could be utilizing this vertical play with the C4s, and how TBD wouldn't just lie down and let that happen. In fact, we were correct. It hunted down Sogs until he was dealt with. Now our attention mainly turns down to Angmo, who's playing around this pixel area and into backstore as well. That was such a cool wipe transition there when Angmo looked. We switched on to Nasty, who was using the same weapon. So trippy. I love it.
And look, Hills is alive this time, and I said that maybe the top of White Stairs would be a strong position for him to play. He's decided to forfeit that. He's going on a flank instead. And this is, again, the critical point, because now there's a lot of pressure happening on this bathroom. The smoke had no choice but to get aggressive there, and because there's no one backing him up, not too difficult for TBD to shut down, and that is really ill-advised from Nasty just to jump straight into those Maverick holes. So this is not looking great at all for LFO, in fact, in this round.
And Hills maybe a little bit too little too late. Doesn't seem to be aware of the player on the other side of that door, and Ippy Style second on the round, and that's a flawless one for TBD. That break seemed to work for them like a charm. Very nice.
Yeah, really good attack from them. It was a bit of a shame because I felt like the Pulse did a reasonably good job on the roam. I mean, he delayed half the round. It was about a minute 30 by the time they cleared him out. Took a bit of time and a bit of effort, and it meant that it was stalled out. So that was already a good start for LFO to set it up. Unfortunate they didn't get a trade at least, but regardless, the time was there. But then there was just some big errors towards the late round, just giving TBD too much control and clearance of bathroom. And from that stage on, it was just too much for LFO to handle.
Now, I am a bit befuddled as to why there were no ADSs at Pixel, which is where that deployable shield was, where the smoke was playing. Because we saw a stun grenade get thrown there, I assumed to waste the ADS, but no, it just detonated. And with Thatcher Band, you could stack all three of your ADSs there and play Pixel until you're dead. So I'm a bit unsure what's happening there. So we are having a bit of a snap at Nasty just there, saying, let me through, mate. But yeah, this is what we've seen from LFO a lot tonight, using the castle to rework the bomb site, and it did work out for them on their first defense here on Kitchen. They won their one so far, and now that it's been 2 rounds since, they'll retry.
And that was a close round as well. I mean, TBD were very much in it. They had a chance at a plant, and they were sticking plant at 0-0. It just happened to be denied at that stage in a 2v1 situation. So it's not like LFO won this comfortably.
No, that's true. Yeah. Really, in fact, if you think about it, LFO shouldn't really have won that round. In a way, we're kind of 3 up for TBD at the moment. Doesn't bode well for LFO here on TBD's map. The high chance here of evening up the scoreline between these teams and settling it with a draw on the series, but early days. Just 3 rounds in at the moment. We had 15 on map number 1.
Yes, we did. And I was critical, or I had a question mark over TBD's attacks for this, because that's what they struggled with last week. And so far, their attacks have seemed a lot better. It's hard to say whether that comes down to just LFO aren't playing it as well, or whether TBD have cleaned things up. I mean, for me, I think TBD have been quite thorough. For sure, LFO have made mistakes, but generally, TBD have been really thorough with these attacks. And LFO, again, just need to play into some time delays in order to give themselves a really good chance to close the round.
Hopefully not give TBD some of the freebie opportunities that they have so far. Like in that last round around washrooms, but nonetheless, TBD got some good map control, half a round down, just moving in, clearing this middle floor at the moment. Joker on the entry. ARX in hand, Ippy style to pinch. The drone clears it out and they can chill for a minute. I think that was a mute jammer, but face check as well. Sog spots out the drone from Ippy style. Ooh, eventually takes it out, but he's going to chill at VIP for at least a little while. Still, it does have, I think there's a crossfire. I'm pretty sure that wall of freezer was, yeah, there's a rotate there. So Mims can help support him as well. And this lack of aggression from LFO, it's something you were talking about. I think it can definitely help them play into that time delay of TBD.
Yeah, and Sogs has done a great job of just shooting these drones, so they never have quite the live intel needed in order to deal with him. He can just sit here in VIP, deny this hallway with that crossfire, as you were saying, and there's not much they can do about it. They have to try and hard clear that. The brown stairs is also covered from his back. Heels looks like playing around that bar area, so this is a good strat, and I like how they're playing it. And look at the time, down to 40 seconds. TBD haven't done an inch of damage onto LFO.
As you say that, Joker does find the opener, and Sogs is eliminated. Yep, curse them, mate. That's VIP control as well, but we do have a player aggressive around the bar. It's here, Heals the Bandit, and he has a great gun to be taking these kinds of fights. Mims as well, just preventing this push on in. 15 seconds left. And they'll just have to file on inside. Caught out while sprinting. Another player likely to be pushing in through this double door, and Hills is good for that one as well. Diffuser on the floor, and poor Jack Dad's got all of this to watch out for, and he just saves a KD there at the end. LFO, just on the back of some good time delay and holding out their positions, do manage to get their second defense here.
Yep, was their second defense of Kitchen. That one looking a lot better than their first one. And look, I think that was really good evidence of what we've been saying. You know, just that time delay is going to work so well for LFO. they stalled out TBD for ages on that attack, and they had such good positions to deny the white hallway push into freezer, and TBD gave themselves about 25 seconds to try and work picks and get an execute.
I think it was about it was 5-on-5 from about 30 seconds left, which is just so tough. Especially when you're talking about a bomb site where there are so many of those funnel points where the defender's just going to sit there with their crossfires. Like, what are you going to do? And Hills decided to get aggressive inside of inside of the bar downstairs. I don't know what you would call that other than like the restaurant bar, but like he got aggressive around there and just sat there until the players started to move up. Now, 15 seconds left, no time to drone out. Hills caught out while sprinting is the player who was Joker. That's it, who was playing the Nomad. So I've got to say, LFO, I think that was the right kind of read there. Question is, can they translate that kind of thought process onto the other bomb sites? Because I'm not sure if that same strategy is going to work the same way. Just the nature of the bomb site being pretty different, and especially on that top floor, TBD was really oppressive with that Maverick, and I think LFO was just feeling like there was no anchor positions they could sit in.
Yeah, top floor doesn't work out as well in terms of sitting and just turtling as the bottom floor does. But there's still some adaptations that LFO can make. We talked about it after that the reattempt of Bar Cocktail, I should say, where they just made some poor decisions in the mid round in terms of trying to flank or try to do something in terms of instead of holding critical positions. Because even if TBD do get a line of sight into backstore, what they're trying to do is actually do the Maverick trick in towards, people call it trash bags. It's that corner in between Cigar and the backstore doorway. That's where TBD traditionally plant. They did it constantly last week with Kangar. They've shown that intent again tonight. So I think that's what LFO need to think about, is to stalling them out. That's where they want to plant. How can we deny that? Trying to get flanks or be a little bit extra aggressive is probably not going to work out as fruitful, or it doesn't have as high a percentage chance of doing so.
I feel like if I'm LFO trying to deny some of these plant spots, instead of, say, roaming Pulse downstairs for the entire round, just trying to hide until I can become relevant and C4 a planter, play on site Pulse. Like, just have someone sitting white stairs the whole round. Late round, you can push downstairs and go for that C4, and that's another thing that TBD is going to have to worry about, especially if they're stacking so much around that piano. We've had at least 3 players there. You're running out of players to kind of have someone go below and contest anyone going for that C4. You could use Smoke Babes, throw them from a safe position on Cocktail. There are a lot of opportunities there that I feel like LFO could incorporate into that top floor. Honestly, I feel like we've talked Bar and Cocktail as a bomb site to death at this point. We are just finishing up another rehost. As you can see, I promise this is going to be the shortest rehost you'll ever see. And I've probably already broken that promise because I think I've seen rehosts shorter than this before, but that's okay, because that's okay. It's just okay. All right, it's okay.
Yeah. I mean, what I really want to see is LFO probably try and attempt a different bomb site. So, A, we've got something else to talk about. But B, just try and keep TBD guessing, because if they try and attempt Bar Cocktail again, that's going to be 3 of their 6 defense rounds on that site. And if they don't win it, that's going to not feel great for them.
No.
And also maybe have some misplaced confidence.
Yeah, I would like to see reading and dining pulled out. I feel like the kind of strategies that we saw from LFO, particularly in the last round of Villa, where they very much were emphasizing a retake strategy on that living defense, that kind of mentality, that kind of retake emphasis works so well on a reading dining defense, in my opinion. As long as you have some strong presence around top white stairs and Cocktail, like we've seen so many teams, very on meta at the moment, maybe just shoot a lot of drones. Maybe shoot a lot of drones and maybe have some mute jammers or Mozzie Pester support. Once you feel like you've done enough utility damage to the attackers and they start mavericking your wall onto the Cocktail, just drop downstairs and then play on the bottom floor and play for a retake strategy. There are so many ways you can deny plant in dining and in library as well. If you have some horizontal control, if you keep presence around mining, there's a lot of opportunities there. So that's the kind of thing I'd like to see from LFO.
Yeah, and I think a point you kind of touched on is that it does feel like it might play into their playstyle better, because it gives them the option. I mean, a team that I've seen do this really well is SSG. I mean, they're world champs, but they do a fantastic job of just stalling that top floor take when they're holding reading dining. They sit in Cocktail, they bring a lot of anti-utility, if you want to call it that. and they just delay and delay and delay. And then most teams have less than a minute at best by the time they finally clear out that cocktail position. And for a team like TBD, where their weakness is not having enough time for a late round execute and not being set up well enough, I think that's something that LFO could execute well and therefore kind of punish TBD on with these attacks.
Definitely. I mean, it's hard to speculate any further than that. There are so many opportunities on that reading and dining defense. If you want to do a hard top floor hold, you could even potentially not contest top floor and just go for a kind of a horizontal hold, but maybe a bit more risky there, especially with how efficient TBD can be when they put their mind to taking ground. But I definitely think there's a lot more versatility there that LFO can experiment with rather than on that top floor defense. On for TBD side for a minute, I've got to say, this is the TBD that we know and love. Like, they are just clean, concise. So these guys are making the work look easy. When they're attacking bar cocktail, it's never a difficulty getting control of piano. They never have difficulty getting control of cocktail. They never have any problems dealing with roamers. And even that fight around Pixel and into like washrooms and the freezer, like there's almost never any contest there as well.
Yeah, like you said, it's exactly classic TBD. I do feel like they've been a little less aggressive than normal, and I don't know whether that's a conscious effort of them trying to rein it in a little bit, because it can, of course, have two effects. It can be really good, really effective. Aggression works against some teams, and sometimes it doesn't. And in this instance, I mean, I feel like they need to step it up a little bit just to put that extra pressure on LFO. They're already doing a great job at the top floor, but we just saw it with that kitchen site. They lacked a lot of pressure onto the defense. They could just sit back really comfortably, and they just kind of let TBD do their thing. So yeah, in terms of the TBD side, I think they just need to play with confidence again. Maybe they're not lacking confidence, but it still looks a bit different. And that was definitely apparent on Villa, and it still feels that way a bit on Kafe.
Despite that, they are seeming to be in the lead. I mean, we are at 2-2 even Stevens, but now that LFO can't return to kitchen in this half, this is really where the pressure mounts for them, and it gives TBD an opportunity to break away. This is on their attacking side, and we would typically regard Kafe as defender-sided. I know that kind of doesn't mean a lot when we had Villa go, 10 rounds out of 12 in regulation be attack rounds, but I mean, you specifically highlighted, Raven, that TBD, it's their defenses that are really, really solid. So if TBD can rack up a few more attacks here, they're going to be in a really strong position to close it out on their defensive half without letting it slip into OT.
Yeah, that's a really big point, and LFO need to dig deep and pull out some big rounds, because defenses is where they need to be excelling to stay in touch with TBD here. Unless they back themselves on attack, I mean, we don't know what LFO is like attacking this against TBD. Maybe their attacks are incredible. That's yet to be measured, but regardless, I just think LFO need to set themselves up in a strong defense half. And I like that they've done what we said. They've gone to reading dining here. I think this is a great start for that. They got 2 rounds to try and edge ahead and put the pressure back on the TBD.
Attackers must locate and defuse a bomb.
Changing that bomb site, it's exactly what the doctor ordered, or at least what we ordered. Not that we are qualified doctors or anything like that.
Reload.
But
Bomb
lovely.
located by attackers.
TBD, let's go. It be style on the Ash still, so it's completely abandoning of the fear. Seems to work. Extra bit of mobility, really emphasizing those close range gunfights, which is what he's been getting into. Always first man in the door, especially when these drones keep failing. Let's have a look at this presence on the top floor. It looks like Hills is playing at Cocktail Balcony. And as expected, most players from LFO are residing on the east side. Sogs is upstairs as well, but we do have Joker repelling. Also the shotgun on the pulse of Anglo, something that's been coming more and more into favor.
Yeah, I've been seeing a lot more of the shotgun on pulse. It's not too bad, but it can be a bit of a pain to use. Bit of a niche use, but either way, so far it's the first minute gone. Been a pretty good stall. I mean, these players in Cocktail haven't shot too many drones, they haven't been under as much pressure. Maybe we're seeing more of a horizontal push here. I mean, Ippy style is putting a lot of pressure here in the mining area, just to deny that play around the 90 hallway and train as well.
Seems like Ippy Style's main focus is just to cut off rotations, but as I say that, he jumps inside. thought there was a player near train, but perhaps not right now. Drones are clearing his other side, and that pulse scanner gets whipped out completely unawares. Surely this shotgun doesn't work. And Ippy Style skates away without a scratch. On kill onto Ungmo. Way to kick it off here. And that's a lot of control as well. Never underestimate what that train control could do for you. It's a lot of the lateral presence established by the attacking side, denying those angles from LFO. Which means LFO, it's all the more important they hold on to this top floor presence as long as possible.
Yeah, super critical, and that hollow housing is going to totally block his sight of Mangoes. So, not a great decision to peek out there, and this is a really good clear now from TBD, giving themselves solid man advantage. Heavily solid now, in fact, and it's all up to Mims.
Mango's going to stick that plant, forcing Mims into a near unwinnable situation, and there you go. Just one kill on the round for LFO, and TBD clean house here. And we talked about how maybe that was... Yeah. You can continue, Raven. I don't want to interrupt.
I was just gonna say, it was looking good early. I mean, like they delayed a bit of time, and the benchmark that I said was holding on to Cocktail until just a bit past that final minute, which they did. But the big difference there was that Ipisol had been allowed to take train, and as you were saying, that map control cannot be underestimated.
Yeah, for sure. And not only was it map control, but it was numbers advantage. Really made TBD, allowed TBD some freedom with that top floor. And once they cleared out that top floor, not only did they clear out, like they got control of Cocktail, but they also killed both of the players who were holding it. It wasn't like a LFO are going to sit at Cocktail for a little bit and then drop downstairs when they're a bit worried. They really held on for dear life up there, and it cost them. Now they will try Wild Cocktail for the third time here. And not a lot of changes really in how they seem to be adapting, but they're bringing the Valkyrie. We saw one Valkyrie camera thrown onto the objective. We talked about how good Jack has been on the IQ for TBD, clearing out that utility, so I can't imagine LFO's Valkyrie cameras and Echo drones will be alive for very long. I like this adaptation though. Shield inside of the bar backstore and not fully reinforcing the wall into Piano. Knowing that that wall is vulnerable to the Maverick and there's nothing they can really do about that. We can see that shield there. Just another way to fight against that kind of push that we expect to see from TBD.
It'll be interesting how that takes effect to counter TBD's attack. And again, we talked about it a bit with this bar Cocktail in that TBD are able to get this piano control pretty swiftly and pretty freely. I mean, there's not any hard contest here from LFO in the slightest. That is an error. I think, yeah, because even if you're just there to shoot some drones and then pull back to Pixel, that's pretty important because it's just going to create a stall point. A big part of TBD's attacks working out is this early East presence from Joker. We saw Hills try to deny that, and that didn't work out. I don't think it's the play to jump out, but either way, it's going to be tough pressure to deal with.
And now LFO finally seeing this strange setup. They're going to spend a drone to check it out. No drone denial here. They spot out the player in the freezer as well. Drone eventually gets taken out, but there's a lot of information gained about this setup, and now TBD are going to be having a conversation about how they want to deal with this. The Maverick a little bit less impactful now. He'd be very vulnerable if he decided to go for that wall into the back store. We might need to see instead the Sledge or the Ash get rid of that soft wall.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be risky to approach in general if they've got the intel so wallbangable. It has created a bit of a stall. TBD just deciding exactly how they're going to deal with this. Sogs has taken a position below there. Can see his outline. It looks like it's in train. So if TBD have lost track of that and are unaware, that could be devastating. A C4 could really change how things pan out for TBD on this round.
Speaking of Sogs, he was the player who played the Pulse previously, so it's really not a huge change. Moving over to... Oh, hello. All right. Hills does get the refrag. Sogs taken down right when I'm about to make a point about him, but then there's a good refrag from Hills onto Ippy Style And that's super essential. Now let's see whether Hills can make good for another kill. Oh, just misses that angle. And now surely they're going to be aware of this position. A peek from top white. That's nasty with a nice shot. Mims as well jumps in the fray. And Mango's going to get aggressive in a desperate position. Finds one. Can he find another one? Back at the back of Cocktail. But no, LFO is very aware of that. Nasta Fuser as well now. Firmly in LFO's grasp. Just up to TBD's Jack Dad to make things happen now.
15 seconds remaining.
Yeah, and he's all stuck on red stairs, not going to be able to get Diffuser, so he's just sitting patiently trying to at least get this pick on a Hills, but he's actually going to jump to his death. Hills closes it out. That means that's a 3-3 half dev, and it's really a telling story of this match.
They finally did it. Finally won bar, and I mean, it proves all the haters, including us, wrong. We were saying that maybe they should have just stuck with Library.
Yeah,
but hey, I mean, it worked. I can't think of what there was a specific thing. I feel like it was more lots of little factors kind of made it work, and it started, I guess, with yes, Sogs was taken out on his roam trying to play for that C4 below, but there was an immediate refrag from Hills.
Yeah, I think the strat that they had around backstore and the piano wall into backstore was probably the biggest difference. It was a strat that TBD wouldn't have been ready for. And it's not like it's a small adjustment. I think that's quite a big deal because it means that they can't as comfortably play around in piano. They're effectively flipping the use of that wall on its head. Because traditionally what happens is the attack takes piano, they open that line of sight through backstore, and that means the defense can't really play through there because it's cut. But because the defenders opened it themselves, they could then effectively use that against the attack in taking that ground. So I think that was a really good adaptation for LFO.
Yeah, for sure. And hey, let's see whether TBD can have any more success on bar than we saw from LFO most of the time. They do in fact decide to go for that full reinforcement, not doing that kind of shield strategy that we saw LFO do. But LFO are bringing the Maverick, so in fact they're bringing the Buck, which isn't something that we saw from TBD. I think Buck may be coming up. He doesn't fit into most compositions quite as easily as he used to. Having lost those grenades, you can still use him to clear ADSs with flashes, or I guess you could bring a Claymore if you covered that one. But that block could be used to flush out those players at Cocktail vertically, and I wonder, is that perhaps why we see these holes in the floor here from Jack Dad to prevent any kind of player like Mims going downstairs? And alright, don't mind me, if his style is just going to go and kill Hills, that's cool.
Yeah, something we didn't see from TBD was the early round aggression on defenses, and that's where it's going to be. If Style actually finds a double, that's going to be devastating to LFO. Having a 3 versus 5 so early in the round is never easy to come back from. And not exactly sure where that second one was from. I mean, the first one must have been an early peak or run out, but looks like he was back on the top floor.
I think the IQ was repelling on the south side and got shot through the window. And then yeah, I don't know about that second one. Thank you, MC, for looking for it. But it wasn't on the west repel because there's no body there. But Ippy Styles feeling pretty confident in his shot, so he's just going to keep on peeking this, and that might help out Angmo. But how does Ippy Style land that first bullet? He's taking a bit of damage for his trouble, but you can see how scared the Nomad is of that terrible Jaeger.
LFO burning half the round now, droning it out Ippy Style in that aggressive position. He's just trying to bank on those early 2 picks there. Playing the pixel spot with the shield is definitely hard to flush out, and I mean, Nasty has some utility there to do so, those frag grenades, but if he has the ADS is still up, and actually he's just going to get aggressive straight through into bar. LFO just going for broke in this round now.
Yeah, not likely to pay off, just Ang left, and he's low HP, Ippy Style for the 3, and that's a flawless round for TBD as well. Very, very nice, and man, I've got to say, there's quite a difference there, quite a distinction between how LFO, we kept talking about how they never seem to hold on to Pixel, they don't seem to get much out of that position, they don't stack ADSs there, and then we have a Jaeger who gets 3 kills from that single position for TBD's side. I mean, that is a bit of a red flag for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that really, really helped Ippy Style with that was just the early picks that he got meant that he knew that he had less to deal with, or that LFO had less to push onto him. They had less to use to clear out his utility, all that kind of jazz. And I think that just gave Ippy style that confidence to play it aggressively, whereas LFO played that position, you could say, passively. They had that shield there with no ADSs, so it was hard to hard hold it. And often they just had that smoke player rotating between the bathroom and that position, and there's only so much you can do from there with the SMG-11.
Yeah, and that's why, in contrast, TBD, I mean, I didn't see how many ADSs were put there. I've got to assume at least some. But they stick a guy who's confident in his shot, Ippy style, and they give him the 416, the highest KPR gun on defense, at least from what I've heard. So looking at Ippy style individually, though, right? I've been tracking some of these opening kills. He's gotten 4 of the opening kills in this game so far. So that was 3 on the attacking side and then that one on the defensive side. Keeping in mind that he actually got the first 2 opening kills in that round. And with all that in mind, he's only lost his opening engagement once in this map so far. And if you compare that to the first one where he was a lot more touch and go and he tended to be in the negative in the KD. But just on Kafe, man, Ippy style has switched on and it's really helping get those early leads that TBD can convert.
Yeah, I think Kafe is definitely just more of a comfort map for Ippy style. He played quite well on this map last week against Kanga as well. In similar vein, you know, playing very aggressively in the early rounds and just all throughout the round in general, he tends to just take it and run with it. It's kind of his play style, and very much so on the Jaeger at that. So giving a strong gun onto a player that's feeling confident and happy to frag out in those kind of instances is going to have a hit or miss effect. I mean, sometimes you'll look at that, maybe he gets shut down and you'll say, wow, he's really struggling. And then you'll look at it and you'll say, he's having a massive impact. That's just generally how the role works. I mean, on top of that, he was playing the Ash on their attack half. So he really has transitions back into this Ash Jaeger main kind of mentality.
Mm-hmm. And hey, it's working for them. And sometimes, especially I think on the attacking side, we were talking about TBD just needed to get their leg in the door, right? Make an entrance onto the map and start to have an impact. And especially because LFO were not really just falling back. They weren't really doing the whole shoot drones and fall back thing for the most time. They were always sticking there, which meant that TBD needed to have a man who was keen to just peek, be the first man in the door, just go for some peeks. If your style was that guy, got the first kill for half of the rounds when he was attacking, playing Ash every single time. So, I mean, credit to him so far. That said, like you were saying, it's not a reliable strategy. Just, okay, Jaeger is going to get a 3k this round. That's our strat. No, that's not quite how it works. And there was a lot more complicated factors that kind of played into that round. But it's a good start for confirming what you had already said coming into this game, which is that TBD have good defenses on Kafe.
It's going to be even more important now that LFO adapts quick, because I think it could really start to fall away from them fast here if they don't adapt to the way that TBD are going to play these defenses. They're going to have to be very thorough with their early drones, especially the ones in prep phase, and think about where they're spawning, how they approach, all that kind of stuff. That's going to create a bit of a stall. So that means that mid to late rounds, they're also going to have to be generally thorough. So the way that TBD have now set this tone is going to be tricky for LFO to come back from. They're going to have to play with some confidence, a very thorough, disciplined style of siege.
And it really does put so much more onus on LFO to think fast and get this done quickly, because if they're losing their attacking rounds, what that's going to force is TBD to then rotate between different bomb sites. So let's say LFO are thinking to themselves, oh darn, the one thing that happened that lost us that attack onto bar was this. It doesn't matter. It's not relevant for the next 2 rounds, because now you've got to worry about, okay guys, stop thinking about that round. Maybe we can learn a bit from the playstyle of the enemy team, but we need to be thinking about a kitchen attack or a library attack or potentially a mining attack. And that's what you need to be focusing on. That's what you need to be using your operator selects, this extra break time while we're going for a rehost. You need to be spending that time talking and getting on the same page, getting yourself hyped up as well, and ready to attack kitchen. Because let's say we see TBD go to kitchen now, and they win that, LFO's got to rotate once again onto attacking a different bomb site. And that lack of kind of just being able to immediately address what went wrong right then can be seriously challenging for some teams.
Yeah, and you're combining that as well with the round differential pressure, because if they're going to be 2 rounds below, TBD up on 5, so that this is assuming they lose the next round, well then TBD is 1 round away from at least forcing overtime, and that starts to put pressure, and you have to think about the comeback on top of the fact, like you're saying, they have to be adapting to these different bomb sites, so it can really snowball, it can really add up. It's really important that LFO swing this back into their favor, or at least stunt some of that momentum.
So while we might think that it's just a 3-3, TBD are definitely in the advantage right now, and the onus is on LFO to get back in this game. We're going to go to a quick break while we finish this rehearse, but don't go anywhere because we'll be back in a sec.
Are you like Caden, who loves to make the most of the slow loading times of his HDD?
Feel your smile keep on heating up the climate, and all the blood to my cheeks are rushing out, yeah, yeah. And by accident, you're getting closer. Well, can you tell me something, tell me something? Is it a wild shot of letting you know that you're the topic of all of my thoughts, yeah. 'Cause I'm so sick of this friend zone.
Hi there, we're back. We're finished with rehosting and we're getting straight back into Kafe here. Raven 4-3 on the second half here on TBD's own map pick. And I think I'm starting to realize why it was TBD pick this one.
Yeah, they've started their defense half really strong, and that's going to be alarming for LFO. We talked about it before the break, that there's a massive onus now on how LFO adapt to this, and that comes with its own challenges. The fact that Ipistar was able to get away with 2 really early picks in that first round, it sets the tone for at least a few more. LFO are going to have to be thorough with drones, and even if Ipistar isn't there, he can play mind games, he can tease them. If he finds a couple of drones in prep phase, they're going to be thinking, oh no, he's going to do it again. We're going to have to drone out this bottom floor or whichever floor it is. And he might not actually have to be in that part of the map.
And something that we didn't talk about a lot in the first half because it didn't seem super relevant for the way that LFO was setting up their defenses. But Thatcher is banned and LFO are the ones who banned it. Now, TBD, they like to play into that by stacking ADSs, by using shields, playing that whole game. And that didn't seem to make any real difference on that first one just because of those early picks. But here on the second bomb site, probably going to be Kitchen. This is where it can really come to fruition, and we're likely to see that Maverick being a pivotal element of the attacking side. Maverick in particular, with those grenades that he now has instead of the flashbangs he used to have, another thing that really Maverick can bring to the table in terms of clearing out shields or other utility. But there is one thing I want to flag, and it's LFO went out of their way to ban Wamai here. And TBD, now they're on their defenses. This is clearly what LFO were targeting. We didn't see it be effective or impactful in that last round, but maybe is this the point where that Wamai ban starts to come into play?
Yeah, it could be, and we don't know what struggles LFO might have faced in that first round, other than the fact that Ippy Style got super aggressive on them and they lost 2 picks. You could almost say that the round was close to a write-off at that stage, given that there was so much time in a 3v5 on the top floor. It's not easy for any attack on Kafe. So yeah, I feel like we haven't had enough of how this half has played out to see what LFO is going to bring and whether that Wamai ban does actually have an effect. I mean, I feel like there are going to be some parts of it that will, but seeing that TBD are probably going to go to Kitchen, I mean, we're assuming, but that site is going to be strong against the way these bans have gone. As we saw LFO, I mean, they won it both times they tried to defend it, and especially the second time, they hardly had to move.
Yeah. Yeah, in fact, that was a... Oh, no, sorry, I got that wrong. I was going to say flawless, but no, that was a different round. But yeah, you're right. It was very much just holding out into the last few seconds and forcing the attackers to file on through. Something to talk about if we end up going to Kitchen. We saw from LFO's side, they very much had an open style hold, not just heavily reinforcing all of the, the freezer wall, the bottom red hallway wall onto the bomb site, the bakery wall, having rotate holes instead in all of these positions. And I feel like maybe that's the kind of strategy we'll also see from TBD. And I think the thought process being that if you're a defensive side and you just leave all those walls fully reinforced, then it comes down to the attackers likely just opening up all of those walls with the Maverick trick, one little line at the top, one little line at the bottom, a bit of soft breach to destroy the soft part of the wall, and those walls are freebies. And it's very difficult to counterplay that from the defensive side. So instead they think may as well play aggressively off that and just have a rotate hole there instead. Is that what we're expecting?
Maybe. I mean, LFO have been pretty good with their own little ingenious strats. Haven't seen as much of that with TBD, and of course TBD very freshly played Kafe. So I just think a lot of what LFO have done has probably been to, like you said, try and counter the defense here of TBD with that Wamai ban. Yeah, I don't know. I'm curious how it's going to affect it and what we'll see in these subsequent rounds, because we've only seen one so far, and I just feel like because of the way it started, it's hard to judge exactly whether that is LFO struggling or whether it was just TBD getting a big reward.
It's totally okay to just have a write-off round like that. It's really getting back into game now. Where is LFO's head at? It's glug glug time, I suppose. Just chugging some water so that they're ready for the game. Carly, hey? That's going to be a 6-pick.
I mean, maybe not, because that is a good counter to utility. But
get wrecked.
It is.
I mean, there's quite a few operators in this lineup on the attacking side that aren't as on meta right now. The Bok and the Capital. Bok losing his nades and Capital coming out of favor, at least within A and Z. Maybe on this map in particular, I would think. So a bit unusual there. I'm not sure what the idea is. And in fact, it's not going to be the kitchen bomb site chosen by TBD, but in fact, Library. And look, this one didn't work out so well when we saw it attempted just that one time by LFO. I do have some faith in TBD that they've got a good strategy for this and they can hold on to Cocktail a bit longer. Information on Bar as well. Reinforcing that hatch as well. I like that hatch that covers mining, allowing TBD a little bit more lateral play.
Bomb located by attackers.
Hills is also onto the Capital, which is not an operator we've seen a lot of play on. And I like that because, I mean, I think Capital's great. His fire arrows in particular can be so effective. And they could be using that to try and help themselves take Cocktail here, or even just deny some of the site moving or rotating, if you want to call it that, with those fire arrows, because it's a massive amount of area denial. I'm really curious how they're going to do it. In fact, they look stacked up on reading. This might be a rush here, Dev.
Couple of drones going out. I think you're right. Ungmo's going to open up the doorway, and the player on site gets on the camera just to see everyone filing inside. But Ungmo falls and Mangoes for 2. Where did he come from? Cutie comes to that flank, gets taken out, but Jack Daddy finds yet another kill. It's all falling apart. Mims hanging out upstairs. I guess the top 4 might be clear now, but they have information on him. Whiffs a few shots. Finally gets that one. Thank you very much. But 4 players to find Ipistar's not going to give him any room to breathe. There you go. Very nice.
Well, it was a brave attempt, and I mean, it could have almost worked out. That player on site just saw it at the right time on the camera. Maybe 3 seconds earlier, things could have been different. TBD, though, are going to be up 2 rounds now. They are on that 5. We started to talk about how that round differential can start to add a lot of pressure against the attack and against LFO. Have to constantly adapt as TBD go down to kitchen.
I guess another bit of a write-off round. LFO, I'm not sure what the go is here. They, instead of kind of just doing their normal strats, do they feel like they need to cheese these rounds? They kind of did something similar the previous round when they were attacking bar. After they lost those 2 players, they just dropped a guy down Skylight, got someone to rush bar, and that didn't work out. I think the proof is in the pudding here. LFO, you can't cheese TBD. You need to play the long game. You need to play it proper.
I think on top of that, I mean, there's a reason that TBD have chosen this map, right? They played it a little average last week against Kanga, but they've still chosen it. I mean, that in itself makes some kind of statement in that they feel confident in the way they play it or confident in how they've reworked it. That's going to be a free drone there, so nicely done. And yeah, so far, LFO have really failed to adapt to TBD's attacks, defenses, sorry. It's only been 2 rounds, but yeah, it's been, like you said, 2 essential write-offs.
Well, I'm not sure what their go is here for this third bomb site. Looks like, from TBD's perspective, they haven't fully, they have rather fully reinforced the bakery side double walls, but they have got that rotate in red. And you mentioned that was a free drone as well in the prep phase. 2 drones, Ungmos and Mims, were both taken out in prep phase. And it's quite essential, especially if you're thinking that maybe Hills and Sogs are probably some of these entries. You need the other guys to be having their drones in the pocket ready to live drone these guys in. And it also reduces the number of drones that are actually set out on the map, ready to be flicked in pre-placed positions to cut off rotations. Ungmo sends in his final drone into Bakery. This is his last drone, and he's meant to be one of the primary droners. We'll check upstairs, and it gets muted. No more drones for Angron.
Yep. That's working out pretty well for TBD.
Yeah, nice drone denial from Joker.
Ooh, not going to land. I was about to say, on top of that, Joker was really the only one off site to delay there. And the rest are sitting pretty down on that first floor. But now they've flushed him out, they can start to progress a little bit further. And put pressure on site. But I'm curious whether TBD are going to play this similar to how LFO did, very patiently. Whether we might start to see some of that aggression, say, from Ippy style.
See how Hills does this one. Working a drone up, spots out that bandit and shield. It'll be difficult. It's actually a Goyo shield. And there you go behind it, Cutie as well. A lot of information for the defense as well with that drone. But here we go. Some of the holes, this vertical play coming into effect. And that is really the vulnerability of this bomb site. But can the C4 find its mark? No, it just opens up another angle for the attackers to use. Whiffing a few shots from the drones, Mangoes falls back to VIP. Still a lot of really good control from the defenders, but the attackers are starting to work this bomb site.
Yeah, they're starting to give themselves a pocket there where they might be able to get a plant down. The most important part of that is they've got to control that red hallway, the long one, past Pochek, which is where Ippy is playing. He has a chance to be able to deny or just generally flank and be a thorn in their side. If they can be thorough with that and hold some angles above as well, they might be able to get this plant down. I mean, TBD actually lack a bit of denial there. They have C4s or had C4s. But I'm not sure how many have been used. Quite a lot of them, in fact.
All of them.
Yeah, all of them. So there is no distance denial here for TBD.
Hashtag thanks MC. Jeff Daddy on the long angle spots that player inside. Pre-fires to the wall, doesn't find its mark. Ippy Style finds one, and Jack whiffs just enough shots to lose that gunfight for him. 4-on-2 now as an entry into the bomb site. Miz going large, but Nasty forcing that plant down. Cutie's waiting for a pick, and this could be denied. It is! 7 seconds left. but Mangoes is the last man standing against 3 players. Can a safe place be found to plant? No one is forcing Mangoes out. He's just going to keep looking for this plant spot. He knows that's his only opportunity, but he doesn't get it. Wait a second, what? Did he just pull off the plants?
Uh-oh.
What?
Oh, no. Fatal error there. Not sure what happened.
No.
But that's unfortunate for LFO. They had that round in the bag, but means TBD are going to be up 6. That is match point now for TBD. 3 rounds behind are now LFO.
But it was looking so good. I mean, for the most part there, I felt like TBD had some strong positions on the bomb site, but after opening up that main wall from Bakery, LFO just made a really strong entry and nailed all their shots into a 4 versus 2. Just strong position to be forcing down that plant. It did have Mangoes to worry about upstairs. Didn't matter in the end, I suppose. Knowing that plant was really helpful. But guess what? You get to see our beautiful faces. Hi.
I bet nobody is sick of our faces, you know?
Nah.
How could that
Well,
be?
why don't we just plug the merch? So tell me what you're wearing. And I did not
so
mean
this
that
is
in a
a-
weird way.
Rainbow Six esports jersey that is pretty cool, you know? It has little operator icons. I don't know if that comes through on my camera, but you can see the
it's way
operator
too
icons
compressed.
all through this thing.
Yeah, no, it's very cool. I've seen that one in person a lot. Very popular at events, that one. I actually don't have one of those. Got a couple of Steve
Super
shirts,
comfy.
but that's not one of
Highly
them.
recommend.
Yeah, it's very much a jersey. So let's say you love watching Rainbow Six Esports, you don't know which team to support, go get that jersey. It's also, I think, probably quite a bit cheaper than most teams' jerseys, most tier 1 teams' jerseys. So
Totally.
maybe a good entry-level jersey before you start, varnishing out your collection of Wildcard, Fnatic, etc. Yeah, I'm wearing a. You can't tell. It looks like I'm wearing a plain black shirt, but I'm actually wearing some of the merch from SI.
Oh.
With,
Yeah,
Nick.
nice.
Don't know if I'm saying that correctly. You'd be my Danish expert, right? You speak a little bit of Danish.
Yeah, you said it pretty well. Nook. It's
Nook?
yeah. It's just not knock. That's the most important thing. It's not
Okay,
knock.
okay. I'll take it. Yeah, I remember when Phantom Sight was about to release, I was talking with my Danish friend, and when I was first heard about the operator releasing Nook, he was the one who was like telling me how to say it. He's like, it's not knock. So
Yep.
that's the one thing that really kept in my brain. All right. So, man, I don't know what happened there for LFO, but that does put TBD on match point.
It does. Yep. Being up 6-3, pretty strong. They've won 3 rounds in a row now, which was more than we could say for the first half. I mean, it was generally trading rounds in that first half, but the second half has just been all TBD, and that's putting a lot of pressure on LFO. They looked pretty good in Kitchen there, but weren't able to secure the round. If they go to Bar Cocktail in this next one, will they get a chance to redo what seemed to be a pretty big fail in that first round of the half?
I feel like LFO is sitting here and they've just lost 3 rounds in a row. Every one of them was totally winnable. Like that first one, bit of a throwaway round. That second one, absolutely a throwaway round. That third one, I don't know what to say. Let's recap the standings. Let's have a look at where these teams are currently sitting, because we've got the results from that first match earlier today already chucked on in here. And that puts LFO nice and square up with TBD and Wildcard, the only teams who have won 2 matches so far. And if LFO can make a comeback, reverse sweep here against TBD, they'll be at the very top of the standings, very bottom seed at the top of the standings.
Yeah, absolutely. And just the position of LFO at the moment has surprised everybody. And I mean, these first 2 games should have been their hardest, right? In theory, based on how the seeding works, performances of those teams that they've been against. But you're right, they have a chance here to potentially take top spot. And who knows how the other matches will play out, but they could potentially hold it, or it could even be a top 2 spot at the moment. And yeah, given the caliber of the opponents they're up against, that's a massive surprise.
Now, Wildcard, I feel like we expect to see them at the top of the standings, and their round difference is what's keeping them there against TBD and LFO at the moment. They dropped less rounds to Sinister than we saw from TBD and LFO in their previous games, but keep in mind, seeing LFO in that position, and TBD to some degree, they've played 50% more games than the rest of these teams, so we expect to see a lot more of a shuffle, especially after Knights and Sinister play later tonight. Possibility for Sinister to really get themselves up, pick them up off the bottom of the standings. We haven't really talked about where we expect this season to end, but do you want to kind of feel out through where we predict these standings to kind of land?
Yeah, I mean, I'm troubled now because LFO are really showing up more than I expected, to be honest. So that's going to be the biggest change. But I really expect Elevate are going to climb back up there. I felt like last week was a bit of an anomaly. And I mean, LFO have definitely surprised everybody, no doubt. But on top of that, I just watching Elevate, they didn't seem like they were playing their style of Siege or what we could expect from them, besides the fact that LFO were playing well. So yeah, I really think they'll climb up. And after what I saw of Wildcard last week, at least, they seem like they're regaining some pretty big strengths. I feel like they're going to close it out in second. I'd almost dare say that my predictions is put Elevate at the top of how it currently stands and chuck Sinister in between LFO and TBD. And that's pretty much where I think it'll end.
Yeah, that's actually almost exactly what I was going to say, to be honest. So it sounds like we're pretty much in sync. I think the expectation here is that Elevate are the number 1 or number 2 team and Wildcard the same. TBD is still a very strong upper half middle pack team, and Sinister we're thinking will kind of reach there as well. Maybe that's partly biased by their streak at the end of the Pro League season, getting victories over Pittsburgh, Ferox, and Kanga in the subsequent 3 weeks. But I know there's still a lot of room to maneuver. Obviously, we're only in the 3rd playday here. A team we haven't talked a lot about is Kanga, and they started last season really strong, but they were just absolutely pillaged by roster changes. They lost people like Worthy to Elevate. They lost Pat to Wildcard. And I think they're yet to recover from that. This is an opportunity, though, to show us that we're wrong about that later in the season, but hopefully we do see a pick up from them. Because that roster has proved to be a breeding ground for talent.
Yeah, and even last week against TBD, while they had some terrible rounds, referencing again 3 flawless rounds in a row at the start of Kafe, they still brought that back to an 8-6. There were some big rounds from them. And I also talked about one of their players that's really stepped up, especially since their roster change, was Leb. And he had a massive clutch. I think it was a 1v3 clutch on that Kafe. That was huge. There's definitely some good signs for them. And I think Six Masters will be their best opportunity to find some form and bring it back. It's just unfortunate that it's so soon after these roster changes still, and a lot of these other teams are really hitting some good form.
Yeah, I don't know. It's tough to say, but I think we've given a pretty good overview of where we expect the kind of season to roll. And that's the reason you have expectations isn't to be right. The reason you have expectations is for them to be either met or broken. And that's what I'm excited for. And I think that's the story of this matchup as well. There was a lot of split. I think the safe bettors would have said TBD is going to be the top dog here. Maybe if you're kind of tempted to the idea of an upset, you'd say you could trade maps. And then if you're, hardcore like me, then you're going to say that LFO is going to win it. And not sure if I'm going to stick behind them at the moment with how Kafe is going, but hey, we're not done yet. But hey, I think that, Raven, let's take a second to talk about something fun that we kicked off last week on Friday night with Late Night Siege. For anyone who has been following the ANZ scene, the Oceanic scene, maybe this is something you're interested in, or maybe if you're just interested in improving Rainbow Six and your skills at it and looking for some extra content, we have weekly streams every Friday night from 8 p.m. Sydney time. And Raven, why don't you give us a bit of an overview of what we do every Friday?
Yeah, so it helps give a bit more of a spotlight to the community. We're going to have special guests on. Last week we had Vinny from Team Sinister, and he helped us go through map tips, operator tips. He spoke about IQ, different uses of IQ, different strategies to use her in, as well as some strategies on Clubhouse and how sites play out, a couple of neat tips and tricks in general, so you can help improve your game and also connect with the guests that we have on. We got to see a unique side of Vinny that you don't get to see of these pro players while they play, of course, because they're just in game. So yeah, it's a great time to just hang out. The show goes for a couple of hours, so you've got a chance to ask some questions, and we try and go through those on the show.
There were some really good questions this week. I think my favorite question, which we spent so long on, was at what point did you go from casual to ranked? And I know there's a lot of people who play this game don't even play ranked, and that's totally okay. But it was interesting I mean, I shared my experience, you shared your experience, and Vinny shared his, and it was so different, each of us, and kind of how that changed the way we play, and what we get out of casual or quick match, I should say, versus what we get out of ranked. And I'd love to hear what people are interested in talking about and making that as topics for this show. So anyone who is interested in that kind of content, feel free to go over to Rainbow6 ANZ, Twitch, Twitter, wherever it is. We stream on basically everything. So drop by this Friday night and we'll be talking to someone, unannounced guest.
Yeah, and you should be excited for it because it's going to be cool. And I'm also excited because, Dev, we are back in Kafe at 6-3 on match point for TBD.
Wait, sorry, are we in the game? Is this the
are
game?
In the game? This is the game.
It's the game! We're playing the game, Raven. All right. Time to get ready to rumble. It is top floor defense. And, well, TBD's been around the world thus far. They won top floor, they won library, they won kitchen. Is this going to be a straight set of defenses sending them to the map victory? I don't know. Let's see if B-Star can just hang around Pixel and tap heads like he did last time.
Yeah, I mean, if LFO can get all 5 of them to the building and safely on the roof or into the building, then we will have a game on here. That's 2 ADSs. I mean, we put a highlight on ADS with the Pixel. That's 2 that just got put there. So that's good use of utility there from TBD. It's going to allow Style or whoever wants to play Pixel. They can play that pretty aggressively and sit safely behind that shield until those are cleared.
One thing to note is that... Oh, sorry, you continue.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think TBD is setting themselves up to be able to hold piano strongly, which is something that LFO weren't able to do.
Oh, yeah, for sure. That Pixel was really a weak point for LFO, and I do want to point out that the ADSs that were placed at Pixel, I don't believe they're going to protect that Goyo shield. So if we see Sogs or with his impacts or Nasty with a grenade to try and clear that shield, that shouldn't get caught by the ADS just because the ADSs were placed behind the shield. But those ADSs will still help prevent any kind of utility being thrown at someone playing in that position.
Attackers recover the diffuser.
That it will, and we have seen LFO officially survive the first minute here with 5 players up. So Style hasn't been able to wreak havoc just yet. He could still do so on a devastating flank, see how they decide to play it out. But regardless, LFO now have a better chance in this round to clear out some of these players and get an execute. But Style is in piano, and that's going to take a bit of effort to push him out.
Yeah, and Joker's just come over to help as well. Mangoes is moving up his Echo Drone more aggressively to enable this position. That drone being taken out, not sure if it saw it be Style, and TBD have totally focused on this piano take. No way! Style, he lets his teammate die! And then he gets the refrag, tried to play it smart, but I don't think that was the play. And that gets refragged out, netting LFO the man advantage.
Yeah, looking good for them so far. They've got quite a bit of time as well, so it's going to put a bit of pressure back onto TBD, but they have great operators up for late round, especially the Smoke and the Echo. So TBD aren't out of this just yet.
There was a bit of vertical pressure there. I think the block downstairs trying to make those positions at Cocktail a bit uncomfortable, and that Maverick trick also doing what we never saw necessary for TBD, and that's opening that key place. Mims through the floor. I think he killed a player who potentially dropped to contest him, but oh, this is just falling apart for TBD. LFO staring down match point, but in such a strong position to make a comeback here, and that is a very convincing first attacking win for LFO.
That it is. That was, much better from them. Getting their picks, clearing up piano beautifully. Style could have been devastating there, but they traded that out, got the control, and it just kept going from that point on. They're going to have to get 2 more rounds, though, Dev. They have to be perfect from this stage to get to overtime at least. And that's still a big ask. I mean, TBD flex their muscles on all 3 of their main sites, Bar, Cocktail, Library, and then Kitchen. And so they have that flexibility, but actually they're going to repeat Bar, Cocktail.
If I'm Style and Joker and even Mangoes right now, I'm thinking, all right, we decided to make a play. We decided to push aggressively into piano and see if we could hold on a bit longer. I had the Yokai drone to help us. It didn't pay out. And I don't want to just like point the finger at someone, but Ippy style, dude, you gotta protect your teammate. That was just like, I hurt inside when that happened. I mean, I love, playing smart like that and not shooting your opponent so that you can potentially get 2 kills instead. But man, Joker would be kicking himself. So maybe just from TBD's perspective, just don't do that. Maybe just hold a bit more firmly at Pixel instead of playing so aggressively, and they can hold on to that control a lot longer and potentially stall out LFO.
Yeah, definitely agree with that sentiment. And looks like the strat is pretty similar here from TBD. Difference though, Jack Dad not playing the Kaid. He's going to go onto the Valkyrie instead. And that means that there's no wall denial. LFO haven't brought any other hard breaches, so that's not really going to be a bit of not a difference at all, in fact. That could be a nice little 6-pick there from Jack Dad onto the Valkyrie. It also means that they've got the extra intel. Maybe that's what they felt the difference was. They just needed some extra intel in order to figure out how to counter what LFO were doing.
And remembering that in contrast to how TBD, Jack Daddy himself plays the IQ, LFO's IQ player of Hills doesn't spend as much time with the scouting. He's typically their primary entry fragger, first man in the building, which means he's spending less time looking for these Valkyrie cameras and echo drones, which means they're more likely to be usable from the defense. I think part of the idea, potentially, from TBD is to try to prevent that Buck from having free round downstairs, because that was how Mangoes died last round. I wouldn't be surprised to see Valkyrie cameras or some kind of information gathering used there.
So far, looking pretty good from LFO yet again. I mean, the Ippy style aggro start hasn't happened here. And the clear of utility has been working really well from LFO in the past 2 attacks at least. They're already taking his piano control. This is really good from them. Lurking though below is Jack Dad on that Valkyrie, so he could get that devastating C4 or flank.
Oh, see you later, Nasty. That was way too risky there for Nasty. Opening up that angle, he got the call that Cutie was on drone in washrooms, but man, that just did not work out as intended. And now that main wall into bar backstore just isn't going to get opened. No hard left for LFO.
That's definitely going to make it a lot harder. They really just have funnel points now at this stage, and a massive rotate that's still available to the defense, and that's the one through backstore. This is really going to change things, and LFO are going to have to do some pretty heavy adapting. It's going to be nigh impossible for them to just straight funnel through these positions. And the fact that Ippy style now has a reverse shield to play at the top of white to still hold that hallway, it's going to be really strong. I would bet that given the time left, what would be better for them is rotating a little bit to put more pressure from Coxowl or White Stairs or something like that.
There is that player White Stairs. A flashbang comes out, only flashes himself in all likelihood. Full information at B-Style going to go for this peak. And there's the flank. Nice and easy for Jack Dad. Perfect stuff. Losing that Maverick also means he can't control those stairs. And whoa, Cutie going huge. Gosh damn it, that's the map. With the shotgun, a 3K on the round. How does that happen?
Yeah, it really all fell apart, and you highlighted it perfectly. Once they lost that Maverick, it was going to be really tough for them. They didn't have much of a chance. They at least tried to push the White Stairs, but the position held there from Ippy style was too strong. So yeah, TBD really brought that back on Kafe. Brought the series back to be 1-1.
I'm not going to lie, it kind of snuck up on me that was GG, because we spent so long kind of talking about that game, and then finally that round hits us, and Cutie, I think that was a 4K on that round, 3K, something like that. Something mad with the shotgun. And yep, very nice stuff for Cutie. Fortunate, crucial mistake for Nasty, which really did spiral into something uncontrollable, but we do end that series 1 map apiece, as you predicted, I might say.
I did, yes. The draw did come out for the series. Importantly, I mean, the round differential dictates who won that head-to-head, and that actually goes to TBD.
TBD.
They won the map 7-4. So if LFO and TBD end on equal points for the round or at the end of 6 Masters, TBD will get that edge. So, I mean, in terms of TBD, the way LFO played, I'd be pretty happy with that. Kafe could have gone the other way. I mean, it's not like LFO played terribly.
No, for sure. There were a couple of flags there, I think, especially on the attacking half. LFO kind of going for cheese strats. I don't really like to use that word, but thinking, okay, let's just go for broke, do something a bit crazy, and just too many of those mounting up together. It didn't help them out one bit. And losing at such a scoreline 7-4, quite different to what we saw in map 1, 8-7, and not quite that intense close game that we were looking for. But hey, if I'm LFO, I've just taken last week a map off of Elevate, 7-2 no less, and here a map off TBD. That's the top seed and the second seed. You got to be proud of that achievement.
Absolutely, they have to be. And on top of that, I mean, Kafe, it was 7-4, but their first half was 3-3. Some of those rounds felt like they could have been theirs, and then they just really struggled with those attacks for one reason or another. Like you said, they tried to rely on some strats that just didn't seem like they were going to work out, like that rush. I guess you call it more like a low percentage play. So yeah, I think they should be happy in general with where they're at. And like I said earlier as well, in theory, their matches should be getting easier as they progress through the season, as they start to play lower seeded teams.
Yes, that's a good point. It's difficult, though, to know whether that's going to be the trend that continues, because last season, I think it was Kanga and Knights got draws or wins against the top teams in their first weeks, because they were the bottom seed versus the top seed. But as the weeks went on, their performances dropped off, Kanga in particular. So it's we'd hope that LFO can continue this when they're facing against the lower seed teams, but difficult to know at this stage. One thing that is for sure is these points that they've gotten against these top teams, like, they are staying there. At the moment, LFO has got guaranteed 6 points, 2 map wins, and that's a really good start. Like, you cannot disregard how much the consistency of just getting one map win week after week can really help out your chances of soaring up the standings later.
For sure, and I think another highlight point that we haven't touched on with Villa is that, yeah, that was LFO's pick, but also it's not like it was a bad map for TBD that they exploited. They took that map off TBD in the fact that TBD are pretty good on Villa historically.
Yeah, very much so. So TBD, a pretty good result for the night, only just losing out the first map. Let's talk to their manager, Centus.
Hello there, guys.
Hey, Centus, dude. Oh, great. Thanks, mate. Thank you for joining us all the way from Germany, I believe. How are you feeling after that game?
Exhausted, and I think I sweated more than I have doing self-defense for over 10 years. So this was a very exhausting game, to say the least.
Oh, yeah. Very much for us as well. Now, I wanted to get an idea of kind of coming into this match, as well as coming into this whole season. How are you expecting the team to be tracking? Coming into today, were you expecting a 2-0 over LFO? Were you expecting to have a bit of struggle? Kind of give us an idea of that.
So we did expect, obviously, since we always try to go for it, a 2-0. But I was thinking about the performance against Elevate last week, and they looked very strong and had a very consistent showing in the past few months and weeks in the LPL as well. So I'm not surprised that this went to a draw, but it's also obviously a disappointment on our part, since it was so close. And yeah.
Yeah, I really want to ask you about Villa. I mean, that was the first map of the series, and they obviously ended up taking it, but it was very close. Was there something in particular about their playstyle that maybe caught you guys off guard a little bit?
I don't think it was the playstyle in particular. I think because if you've noticed last week, our attacks were relatively weak, and we struggled with those very much. And this week, you saw the opposite, because we really concentrated on getting those attacks right this week, and didn't do as much preparation for LFO as we should have. We definitely underestimated them in that regard. And so I guess we've just had our focus too much on fixing our attacks and getting those right. And then when it came to the first half of the defense, we just, I don't know what it exactly was, just the mindset wasn't there. And that's why we lost 5-1 in the first half, which just shouldn't have happened.
So after that result, you guys have had 2 weeks of 6 Masters, 5 more games to go. Is there anything you want to say out there to the fans or any prospective organizations that might be interested in acquiring a very skilled Australian team?
Thank you for everybody that is supporting us, and to anybody out there who's looking to get into Siege. Now is the moment. Now is the time to invest into Siege and to get into Siege. If it's LATAM, if it's Australia or APAC, and overall. And yeah, I just hope that you make the right decision and go with us, because a first place team, as we will be at the end of the season, is just worth it, I guess.
Lovely. Thanks for joining us, Sentence. Have a good night.
Thank you too. Bye.
That awkward moment when you tell someone who's on the other side of the world, have a good night, when you realize it's not night over there.
Well, I mean, he has a chance to have a good night still, so I mean, it's still
That's
valid,
true.
right?
It's true. I mean, it's still like this morning for him, so he's got plenty of time. He can get so much done today. Imagine that.
Yeah.
No. Good insight. One thing that interested me in particular was Sentis was very aware and very forward with saying that he believes they did underestimate LFO.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and yeah, admirable to admit in the interview. It shows us that they were caught off guard a bit in that Villa map. And I think one thing that would catch me off guard if I think about it is that I definitely wouldn't have expected they chose Villa if I was TBD, because you know that that's one of your stronger maps. You probably wouldn't prep for it, considering you don't think that your opponent's going to pick it. So that worked out obviously for LFO in the end. Yeah.
Well, it's time to have a chat to the other side of the fence. It's Enigma from LFO.
Hey guys.
Hey Enigma, welcome to the stream. Great to see you, mate. How you going tonight?
Thanks for having me. I'm just tired. I just want to go to bed. My eyes are sore. I've been sitting down for 3 hours. Like, it's a
Well,
killer.
at least you're done for the night, mate. We got 2 more maps to go.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I don't even know what to say. Hey, Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely probably one of the longest 2-map series I've ever casted. Tell me, I want to hear more about the Villa pick. We've talked about it a lot, seeing as it's a somewhat strong map for TBD. Maybe talk us through your thought process in picking Villa and just what you guys were thinking going into it.
We're good at the map. You know, why should we be scared of another big team being good at the map if we are good at the map ourselves, you know? I mean, if we don't back ourselves with those sorts of picks, you know, unfortunately, at the end of the day, we don't deserve to be playing in this competition. You know, we kind of studied what we thought they would take us to. We knew they would take us to Kafe. Unfortunately, you know, bad on our side on that one. But for Villa, I mean, we're good at the map. Bring it out. Let's see what happens.
So that
Yeah,
living
I mean-
strategy. Sorry, Brandon, please.
Oh, actually, I was going to ask the same thing. You go.
Yeah. Well, that living strategy, that's what we want to know about, man. I mean, I was on the edge of my seat the whole
that's
time.
right.
7-7, and you did it. You just pull out that living strategy. Give me the dates, mate.
I was like to them, all right, boys. I was just, you know, calculating all the variables in my head. I was like, all right, that's it. We're whipping out the living strat. This is what we need to do. We need to slow the game down. We need to, like, you know, that we haven't touched that at all this whole round. So let's bring it in, and it worked for us. I mean, that's the sort of things that we need to be doing. And we did it.
Perfect, mate. Well, you're the best dressed coach that I've ever interviewed here
Thank you.
on a Six Masters of Pro League broadcast, so commendations for that. Now, you guys have come out swinging this season. I'm sure you've gained a lot of fans in doing that, and you guys are currently without sponsorship, without an organization. Is there anything you want to say out to anyone watching right now?
I guess at the end of the day, you know, just keep looking at what we're doing. You know, we told that we weren't going to be fluking from last week. We came in, we took a map off, you know, the 2nd seed. We're here to stay. You know, we're keen to become one of those teams that everybody looks up to and expects, you know, results from. And we will be delivering results week in, week out, you know. So just keep in touch. Keep looking.
Love to see it. Thanks for joining us, Enigma, and good luck in your game next week.
Thanks very much, guys. See you later.
That was my first interview with him. That was awesome. I love the suit. That sold me.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. And look, I really dig his confidence. You know, he has so much of that in his team, and obviously they've played that way. It's one thing I spoke about in that they never seem particularly affected by mindset stuff or pressure. I mean, of course, there probably is bits and pieces of it, but pressure is a big one for me, considering they came in as the 8th seed team. Of course, they would have had low expectations on them, so in some way there's minimal pressure. But at the same time, this is their first go at the big dance at Six Masters. They haven't competed this level before. That still has pressure in itself. And now that's 2 weeks in a row against the top 2-seeded teams where they've really shown up.
Very much so, yeah. And they've got Wildcard on the agenda next week as well, so that's going to be a toughie. So that's a great first half to the night, trading one map apiece, LFO and TBD. But next up is Sinister versus Knights. So hold on to your coke. We're coming to you in a minute.
Attackers dropped the diffuser. Attackers dropped the diffuser.
Swapping!
Seconds remaining. Attackers dropped the 10 seconds left. The bomb. Drop the bomb. Attackers recovered the bomb. 10 seconds left. Attackers bomb diffuser. Attackers dropped the diffuser.
Are you like Caden, who loves to make the most of the slow loading times of his HDD?